Warning. This show contains content intended for adult audiences. The language is crass at best and downright insulting most of the time. This is all made for the sake of comedy and poor sophomoric taste. The skits are parodies, and any similarity to real people or stories is purely coincidental. Any insults hurled at any one human is made in jest. We're just covering our bases for when one of you skins your knee on an internet insult. We love you. Again, this is all a joke, whether you laugh or not. Not just the show, but this waking existence. The great cosmic giggle. Try not to take it seriously.
Should you ever be confronted with the temptation of taking that first puff of a marijuana cigarette, don't do it.
I don't know about you, but as for me, the question has already been answered. Should we be here? Yes.
The business of culture, any culture, is to perpetuate its cultural models. And if the hallucinogenic plants have not been integrated into the cultural model, then they are definitely seen as dangerous forces for an unpredictable sort of social change.
Let's try this again.
Yeah.
Welcome back, ladies, gentlemen, non-binary, sentient artificial intelligence, flora, fauna alike. We're going to do this whole thing over again. That's when it really feels like the acid, man. I swear we've already done this, dude. Happy Bicycle Day, ladies and germs. One of my favorite holidays. One of the, as far as I'm concerned, one of the most significant dates in human history, Seth. Bicycle Day, April 19th, 1943, right in the middle of a grand world war. A Swiss chemist.
War of the Worlds.
A Swiss chemist who had
Al.
synthesized. Oh, Al. Me and Al go back. Once scored 4 touchdowns in a high school football game. You know what, dude? Unbelievable. It's something to do here. The live video has ended.
What?
Hang on a second.
Well, that just happens sometimes. I don't care who you are.
It doesn't appear to be running any better. So this is the part where I start to lose my mind, because the intro looks great. It makes me wonder if it's not the capture card getting absolutely smoked on the camera. Because how does your camera look, Seth? Move around. Nah, it's still getting you too. It's the only thing I can
output,
figure.
The stream that we are collecting here is fine. The bus, as they call it, that takes it out. There's
listen, 100 Mondays are a rough time. 117 down, 130 up should be more than enough to be able to not only stream, but just absolutely scream through a stream.
Stream and dream.
So I don't know what to do about this. I don't know if people are down to watch us be all laggy. But we can mess around with it for a minute, see if people are along for the ride. If you want to throw up the text line. Basically, the point is, and what I was trying to do was to figure out, it looks like Facebook's probably going to be the best. We should kick AT&T in the nutsack. I agree, Dusty Robinson. I agree with that. We should kick them clean in the nutsack. And in the meantime, what we're going to do is we're going to try and read a couple of trip stories. The other thing, let's see here. If this don't happen, I'm going to feel like a child sent to bed without dinner tonight.
Samesies. Same girl, same.
I've got one. Listen, I hate to stop this and go live again and call it like 8 o'clock. I only have one other thing in my brain that might fix our problem. I don't even see what exactly is happening on the live stream. It's all very frustrating, you see.
Why does it have to be on bicycle day?
Well, of all days. It's not just, that's just it. We pay good money. We pay good money to make sure that we have screaming internet here doing the damn thing. So I don't really know what to do here, pal. I don't know what to do here.
You look great, by the way.
Well,
camera.
thanks,
Look
man.
at that. I think that's a great shot.
It's a holiday. I'm hoping to
a lot of hard work people do not get to see.
I'm hoping to have a good time, and it's all we can do. It's all we can do. So listen. Let's try it one last time. I've got only one other thing I can do. It's not for a lack of trying, guys. It's not for a lack of resources. I truly don't know what to do about this. And it's kind of one of those things like, everybody's going to go and celebrate 420 tomorrow.
Hitler's birthday? Honest, the fuck?
The anniversary of Columbine? Like, come on, guys. Get it together. Yeah. Yeah.
That too.
All
what
kinds
a
of,
dark,
all kinds of weird. It's a dark
really
day. A real dark
day.
And I don't want to yuck anybody's yums. It's just it's not as an important day to me as to
It's working now. Yay, says somebody.
It's working now. Well,
okay, guys.
All right. Well, we'll give it a ride.
Here's what we'll do. Here's what we'll do, Craig. If it's not working for you, tune out. And if we find ourselves talking to 0 people, because we can see that, then we'll just shut the camera off, and me and you will just we'll go downstairs and get some coffee.
Not a bad play.
We'll talk about
not a bad
bicycle
play.
day. I was gonna bust out my stamp collection for the first time on a live, whatever this is.
We look great on here. Maybe it caught up. Maybe it caught up. I don't know. We'll give it a shot. I'm happy to be along.
Do you think the neighbor is sabotaging us somehow?
Listen,
She's mad.
I don't want to go through.
I am in suspense right now, Craig, and my anxiety, the type of anxiety I have, me. I've been pacing around this building while Craig was getting ready for the last half hour because I got a voicemail from the landlord saying, I bet she can hear that.
It's part of the reason why I'm doing it. Listen.
You're putting me in a crazy. See, I get to, just like when we were on G&U, I had to talk to the network people, the CEO, and now I have to talk to the landlord of this place. I'm always that guy.
I don't want to make it hard for you, bud.
So yeah, I got a voicemail saying there must have been a complaint of some kind. I don't have the details to said complaint, and I've called 3 times, and it's just driving me nuts.
You just want to know.
It's probably noise.
That's the worst. Like if you've got someone that you care about that's upset with you, but they're not willing to kind of really effectively communicate why they're upset, and so you're just left guessing. If
it's about fucking weed, I'm gonna be pissed because me and you, I'm gonna tell everybody they're not gonna believe us. But we came up here and I was like, "Are you smoking weed in the goddamn hall?" And you're like, "No, I thought were you?" And we're like, "Dude, somebody chonged up the second floor somewhere nearby."
Listen,
and
like, nobody would believe us any other time.
But that's totally gonna get pinned on us if somebody's smoking. No, of course,
and
nobody.
Straight up,
me and you will be the first to admit, oh yeah, we got chiefed, and we won't do it if it's a problem. We won't do it.
I'm not hiding it. I have
smells
nothing
like
to hide
medicine
from you.
to me.
Nothing to hide from
like
you.
A God-given
Also,
plant.
It bears noting.
Fuck, they're microwaving for their lunch out there in the break room area. It doesn't smell too goddamn great either.
How's it looking over on Twitch, guys? Because it seems to be everything caught up. So to answer James Thomas, to answer your question, pal, we are on Restream now. We were running it through Streamlabs for a second. And it would appear that when you see it run through, we just need to run through Restream for the moment through OBS. Either which way.
Skittles is making death threats right now to get
Skittles
this shit
is making
fixed.
death threats.
Are you in a bathtub right now, bro?
Hang on.
Let me guess. I'm gonna go on a limb and say he's in his bathtub drinking a beer.
I'm a big Skittles fan. Also, I just want to remind people we are 17 days away from shutting down Facebook. Mm-hmm. It's going to be great.
We're shutting it down. It's going to crash once
we're shutting it down. Once the sophisticated Hoosiers leave, what is Facebook even for? I don't know. That's been my reality for a few years. That's been my reality. And I hope that, just a couple of things before we really get into the spirit of the holiday. Because as I was saying, as we were getting all choppy, this is one of my favorite holidays. It marks a very, I think maybe an underrated or under-recognized significant moment in human history and evolution. At least for like we all kind of take guesses at different natural psychedelics. Terrence McKenna had the stoned ape theory. We wonder kind of when we stumbled upon, psilocybin, when we stumbled upon, mescaline containing cacti, natural.
When does he
unquote.
think stoned ape theory occurred? Does he have like a point in the evolutionary
actually know the
tree
answer
where he
to that.
says
That's something we
because
should discover.
cognitive ability? I will say it's weird because some people like the ancient astronaut theory. Some people think that's just how evolution worked.
Right.
And then there's people like McKenna that's like, well, it was clearly psychedelic plants because he just credits psychedelic plants for everything, and I'd love to give him credit where it's due for sure. But
Yeah.
And like I said, there was a big cognitive advancement in hominids between like the Homo erectus, Homo sapien, obviously era. That it was a big jump. It was just like our jump in technology around the same time that they found the not the ranch, but the place in New Mexico. I've heard. Well, Area 51.
Okay.
But what?
But the other place?
The place where it crashed. What's
Okay,
it called?
Roswell?
Roswell, that's it.
Yeah,
The
okay.
name escaped me for a second because there's big technical advancement after Roswell as well. So if you look at these things, anytime there's a big leap in anything from our cognitive ability to our technical advances,
Okay.
a lot of people like to credit the ancient aliens for that.
It looks like it's butt fucking us again.
Is it
I
butt
don't
fucking?
know.
This is probably all these comments, man.
I thought
all
we
the
had a
love
good
we're
thing
getting.
going here. We're just gonna keep on. We're just
Do
gonna
you-
keep on
do you-
keeping on, and maybe it'll catch up. Maybe it won't.
Because the apes would, or not apes. I hate when people call them apes. They're not apes. They're hominids. Okay.
Okay, all right.
They're early proto-bipedal hominids, Craig.
I'm
And
always.
if-
I love it when you
were
talk evolutionary biology.
Were they
pal.
taking these freaking these psychedelic plants or however they're getting these psychoactive substances? Were they taking it ritually? Because I could just see an early like Homo erectus eating a plant and completely freaking out.
Well,
Probably beating another Homo erectus in the head with like a bone or a rock.
okay.
I don't think it's something that they would do continuously that would, trigger such an advancement. But hey, it's an interesting theory.
Sure.
I think his brother Dennis even disagreed with him on that.
Probably. I don't. Yeah.
He disagreed with him on quite a few things.
Yeah. I mean, I think that also Dennis has a little bit more
Don't
time.
listen to Dennis. He's just jealous.
Yeah. Dennis is always. He couldn't carry Terrence's jock. No, I'm just kidding. Dennis is great. So okay. Well, just I'm trying not to get too sidetracked here because we're gonna have some fun discussing what Bicycle Day is. You guys let me know. If it's all worth it. So basically, Seth, in 1938, Albert Hoffman, he first synthesized LSD. What they were doing is they were looking for like a headache cure, basically, and they were playing with these different ergot alkaloids, from these fungus that grew on rye. And they synthesized this material. Now, this was starting to be, especially with like pharmacologists, this was starting to be the time that most of these studies were being done on like lab rats and mice and things like that, and they were measuring the effects at that point.
I can't read these texts with these glasses on. So
I got it.
That's why I'm like
Hoosiers.
binging.
Oh, good. Live button is on because I got stone stuck the other night on an older episode commenting, and it was all live. Well, that's fun. That's awesome. Welcome, Tabitha. Thanks for being here. Anywho, it was kind of there. There used to be this, the scientists, the chemists throughout the 1800s and even early 1900s. Were still pretty. They still tested on themselves. They still experimented on themselves to.
It'd be
be
cruel
able
not to. You can't give it to a mouse and be
Well,
like,
and
"How you
that's-
feeling,
and that
bud?"
was the idea. It was like on like analgesics and painkillers and things like that. Those are things that were a little bit easier for them to measure in animals than with people. But it wasn't until they kind of found this new class of drug. Which at the time they called psychomimetics, which we later classified as psychedelics, and now there's all kinds of different words. But
it definitely helped out with the music genre because psychomimetic rock doesn't sound as good as psychedelic rock.
Yeah, psychomimetic rock. Now, no doubt.
Too many syllables. Like, bro, no.
Don't hit me with the mimetics, bud.
Bro, what's with the mimetics?
Come on, bro.
Twisting my brain.
So anyway, I did find a kind of a really cool breakdown of Bicycle Day, and I want to take people on a little journey, the story of Albert Hoffman and kind of how we came to find LSD. So every year on April 19th, devoted psychonauts celebrate Bicycle Day. It's kind of like 420 is for cannabis tomorrow. How great that we have two such significant quote-unquote drug holidays back-to-back. But the very first Bicycle Day was nothing to celebrate for Albert Hoffman. The Swiss scientist who discovered LSD's hallucinatory effects after accidentally dosing himself with acid. At one point, Hoffman was convinced he would not survive the ordeal, and that would become the basis for the holiday. And yet, dozens of trips later, he called it a tool for human evolution. The history of Bicycle Day begins in 1938, as I mentioned, when Hoffman, who was working in the pharmaceutical department of Sandoz Laboratories in Basel, Switzerland, first synthesized LSD from ergot, which is a fungus that grows on rye. At the time, Hoffman had no idea that LSD had psychedelic effects. In fact, he was hoping it would be a useful analeptic, which is a type of stimulant that treats respiratory and circulatory problems.
Okay.
So asthmatics, people that are getting bad circulation, they thought, hey, we'll give them some LSD. They'll be breathing no problem. Since analeptics were often used to help people recover from anesthesia, Hoffman's lab began testing LSD on sedated animals. The new drug made the sleeping subjects twitch a bit, but nothing more. So the lab shelved the experiment and all other tests on LSD. Hoffman wouldn't touch the substance again for another 5 years.
Scared the shit out of him.
But when he did, it changed his life and it revolutionized psychedelic
I could just see him
science.
like 5 years later, like 1942. He's sitting there. It's a board. He's like looks over. And he sees he's got a little petri dish with some LSD, and he's like, "Oh, dude, I'm gonna fucking take some of that." He did it with. By the way, he wasn't by himself.
Do you know what ended up? So this is where it starts to get a little.
There's another guy with him, right?
A little cool. He had an assistant in the lab
that took it with him and rode that bicycle.
That was gonna help him.
The only
get
thing
home.
that could have made it better if they had one of those fucking tandem bicycles.
Yeah. So 4/19/43 was not the first time that anybody dosed acid.
Okay.
Hoffman was the first person to drop it, but his first trip wasn't on the 19th. It was 3 days earlier. On April 16th, 1943, Hoffman decided to take another look at LSD. So he started synthesizing a new batch. Just as he was finishing that process, he began feeling strange and decided to set his work aside for the day. After going home, he kicked back on the couch and sank into a not unpleasant, intoxicated-like condition characterized by an extremely stimulated imagination. I perceived an uninterrupted stream of fantastic pictures, extraordinary shapes with intense kaleidoscopic play of colors.
That's a fun way to describe it.
Yeah,
I've always tried to describe the visuals like to people, and what I've finally landed on, everything around you, your reality turns into a digital oil painting with a pulse.
I've had that.
I like that. Is my description?
I like that.
That's the dose I'm looking for.
That's the right. That's interesting
I'm
that you bring that up because when I think when people
some colors too, it's weird.
I think when people talk about like when they wax poetic about the golden years of LSD, like in the 60s, I think that the reality of the situation, when you talk about the Beatles and Yellow Submarine and all of this acid movement where people were fucking turning into cartoons and reality was melting away. I think a few other people think this too, but whereas we think a dose is somewhere around 100 micrograms, which is a millionth of a gram, and nothing is psychoactive at that level until LSD comes along. I think that
nothing would affect the human brain in any capacity, any way, shape, or form.
A millionth of a gram. Yeah.
Except for LSD.
So anyway, where was I going with that? So I think that back in the 60s, I think that the hits that they were taking, I think they were like 2,000 mics. I think they were just dosing the piss out of people because they didn't really know. Like they did. They weren't dumb. Like these were brilliant chemists that were making it. But
there's
also,
no way you could think that a microscopic dose would do anything.
Yeah. I mean, when you're just talking about a little tablet or something. But I mean, that's what a lot of people speculate that even though we know a dose to be 100 mics or a hit basically.
They drop it on their joints. I don't know if that really does anything.
I don't think so. I mean, maybe if you put it on the end that you put in your mouth, it will.
I think it'll do.
It'll do it then, But yeah, as far as burning it, I don't think so.
I don't know.
So Hoffman was convinced that the weird experience had something to do with LSD, which he may have accidentally absorbed through his skin while handling the substance in the lab. That is, they have not been able to recreate.
That's what I tell the cops.
Transdermal, intoxication with LSD like that. As far as we know, that's only a myth.
Yeah, people always said like when I was a kid,
don't get it on your fingertips.
Like you've seen an SLC Punk where the guy's got the sheet of acid in his pocket and he's running from the cops.
Now that might be a little different because
he runs
it turns
to a sprinkler.
into water. That might be a little bit different. I'm not sure on that. Like that,
the sprinkler hits his pocket, soaks the sheet of acid.
They show the muscles in his leg. That's awesome. It's Devin Sawa. Is who plays that character.
I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've seen
He's the
movie.
kid that
Steve Elgin's in that movie.
He's the kid that yes, he is.
Yeah,
he's the kid that quarterbacked the Little Giants. That's who Devin Sawa is. He's a 90s
it's been even longer
heartthrob.
Since I've seen Little Giants.
90s heartthrob.
Isn't Rick Moranis in?
Oh yeah,
he's the coach, right?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Did he write that movie? He wrote a lot of the stuff.
I think Robert Zemeckis did.
Because Rick Moranis
asked me how I know that. That's how many times I've seen fucking Little Giants. I've seen him.
You're just I'm a big Little Giant.
I was a Pee Wee football guy. I was big
when I was
into
a kid.
it.
I don't know.
So you were talking about Albert Hoffman sitting there 5 years later, and he's just looking around at a little dish. This is actually what happened. LSD spoke to me. He came to me and said, "You must find me." He told me, "Don't give me to the pharmacologist. He won't find anything." So he's sitting around, and LSD itself reaches out to Albert Hoffman and tells him he has to be the one that takes it. They're going to test this in animals, and they're never going to be able to measure the effects of this. This is something that you can't do with a double-blind study.
You could probably measure. Well, they probably didn't even have the technology to really measure brain activity on psychedelics.
Probably not in the way that like an fMRI or something like that.
Sure.
So, the anecdote might seem bizarre coming from a respected scientist, but Hoffman didn't believe that science and spiritualism should be mutually exclusive. When you study natural science and the miracles of creation, you don't turn into a mystic. You're not a natural. If you don't turn into a mystic, you are not a natural scientist, he said in the Times interview. It's called Bicycle Day because of World War II. So on April 19th, he goes back into the lab to drop acid on purpose this time, but had no idea how much to take. The recommended dose for a first-timer is between 100 and 200 micrograms.
Talk about blazing the trail.
Dude, what do you do? Especially something that's so psychoactive.
I'm going to guess my way in.
Something that's that active at such a low dose, like, whoa. So, but there was no way for Hoffman to know that since he was, there's no way for him to know that since he was LSD's own guinea pig. So he guessed 250 micrograms would be a suitable dose, which 2.5 hits of acid, which he swallowed at 4:20 p.m., fittingly enough. So it didn't take long for Hoffman to realize how strong a dose he'd taken, and after noticing the altered perceptions were of the same type as before, only much more intense, and that he had to struggle to speak intelligibly, Hoffman decided that tripping out in a chemical lab was a terrible idea. So he asked his assistant to help him get home.
He's like, but if you had like some music,
yeah, this might be a little
really
better.
Enjoy this is set and setting.
This might be a little better.
He had to learn set and setting. He had to learn
Don't we all?
Dosage.
Yeah. Don't we all? As these trip reports and trip stories come in, I'm sure there's a couple in there that
This guy had nothing.
might have been a little harrowing
experience
experiences because they weren't in control of their set and setting. You know?
I think the scariest part is he has, like, when you're tripping and you take hit an acid and you're like, okay, I know I have 7 hours. This guy's like, this might be my month. This might be who I am now. That would throw me into a crazy, because even when I had a bad experience with mushies when I was like 18 years old, 17, 18 years old, I felt like I was stuck there. It's like, how long is this gonna last?
Sure.
I at least had friends around me to make fun of me and be like, you're fine, you don't need to go to the hospital.
Yeah,
You know,
that helps.
But he had none of that. That's just, imagine going into an LSD trip and being the first. It's just insane to think about.
Dude, can you and trying to get people to understand at what level you're even what are you even saying, you madman, right? I talked about this before on the show. Like, I had an experience where I was like, I'm never calling anybody crazy again. I have no idea what stage of consciousness that they're in, and what exactly their situation is. I'm just not calling people crazy, because if I was trying to explain some of my most truthful special experiences that I've ever had, people would say, put his ass in a rubber room and lose the key. He's a madman. So anyway, it didn't take long for him to realize how strong the dose he took. He was having a hard time speaking, so the guy was going to get him home. They couldn't drive to his house because during the war there were restrictions that prohibited the use of cars on public roads. So they had to ride a bicycle. And that's where the name Bicycle Day comes from. And actually, and I'm not sure if I have that here in front of me, the guy that actually came up, Bicycle Day was like instated in 1985. And it was this guy.
The year I was born.
Yeah, it was this guy that was like, he wanted to commemorate like this significant point in history. And Albert Hoffman had actually asked him, what did he, why didn't he call it LSD Day? Albert Hoffman wanted to know, like, it was a significant day. Why don't you call it LSD Day? And the guy's like, well,
Just doesn't have a same ring to
bicycle's a little bit easier imagery to sell and kind of, use in the public. Like, you might get a little bit of blowback on an LSD day. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Maybe not. He was trying to go about it the right way and a little bit more mindful.
Well, everybody and their mom's going to be like, well, what's LSD stand for? And you have to explain that whole thing to them.
Yeah, then you got to do that. So, all right. So, it didn't take. Let's see here. The first Bicycle Day soon became a living nightmare for Hoffman, who began tripping even harder once he got home. My surroundings had now transformed.
Started peaking, bro.
Yeah, it started to come on real strong. My
It
surroundings.
feeds off of your emotions too.
Oh,
so
no
if you're,
doubt
if you're
about it.
Like a bad trip,
No
just
doubt
turns
about
into
it.
a worse trip
Yep.
because that bad feeling's just getting distorted over and over again.
No question.
It's fucking crazy, bro. Fucking Al, dude, you crazy, bro.
My surroundings had now transformed themselves in more terrifying ways, he notes in his memoir. Everything in the room spun around, and the familiar objects and pieces of furniture assumed grotesque, threatening forms. They were in continuous motion, animated, as if driven by an inner relentlessness. At this point, Hoffman became convinced that he'd poisoned himself. The best antidote, he believed, was milk. Lots of milk. Since there wasn't any in his house, he asked his assistant to fetch some from his neighbor, but that only made things worse. Steve actually told a story on our show about like the first time that he did acid with like a buddy of his, and he had a buddy that was frying so hard and he was convinced that milk was going to bring him down. I wonder what that is.
It's crazy because you know what I like to eat when it's like
Ice cream?
ice cream
Yeah?
coats the stomach.
Okay.
Because, you're not really hungry, but you're starting to think about food again. I'm like, I want to go lay down in bed.
Yeah, it's a little...
It's perfect.
It's a bit of an anorexic, I guess. It kind of I don't know. I can eat on acid more so than other, more so. I don't necessarily want to, but
Forget all about food.
Yeah. I mean, there's been times. There's been times for sure. The lady next door, whom I scarcely recognized, brought me milk. In the course of the evening, I drank more than 2 liters. She was no longer Mrs. R, but rather a malevolent, insidious witch with a colored mask. Just pumping them full of liters full of milk. The neighbor wasn't the only thing that scared Hoffman, who felt like he'd been possessed. A demon had invaded me, had taken possession of my body, mind, and soul. I jumped up and down and screamed, trying to free myself from him, but then sank down again and lay helpless on the sofa. The substance with which I had wanted to experiment had vanquished me. It was the demon that scornfully triumphed over my will. Things spiraled from there, Seth. As Hoffman began to worry about losing his sanity as well as his willpower, soon he began to fear that he might lose his life as well. I was seized by the dreadful fear of going insane. I was taken to another world, another place, another time. My body seemed to be without sensation, lifeless, strange. Was I dying? Was this the transition? The most challenging parts of the experience lasted until his doctor arrived to check Hoffman's vitals, which were normal. The only thing that seemed strange to the doctor was Hoffman's inability to speak coherently and his extremely dilated pupils. After the doctor and the assistant helped Hoffman to bed, he began to relax and finally enjoy the trip. Now, little by little, I could begin to enjoy the unprecedented colors and plays of shapes that persisted behind my closed eyes. Kaleidoscopic, fantastic images surged in on me, alternating variegated, opening and then closing themselves in circles and spirals, exploding in colored fountains, rearranging and hybridizing themselves in constant flux. Every sound generated a vividly changing image, with its own consistent form and color. The morning after, to Hoffman's surprise, he woke up the next day feeling better than ever, and everything around him seemed wonderful. And isn't that, like, I don't know if that's the universal experience, but I can tell you this. After the first time that I had tripped, my first experience was with mushrooms.
Same.
I think
that's the way to go.
It was an extremely intense trip that I didn't stay inside and decided to fucking venture out into the world, and it was a whole lot. And at parts it was very harrowing. I'll never forget. I was watching Clerks, and to this day I don't think that I've ever visually had this kind of mushroom experience to this day. But like Clerks was a black and white movie, and I'm watching it.
You started seeing the fluorescent lines patterns that would start to build.
And also the apartment that I was in was monochromatic. Okay, so everything was black and white, and there were splashes of red in this apartment. But outside of that, it was very, chrome, steel, white, black. And I'm watching a black and white movie, and dude, when I started giggling, whatever, half hour in, I start laughing kind of uncontrollably. And I remember how it happened too, because I was wanting to buy some pot from my normal dude, right? And he's like, dude, didn't come through, but I do have these. And I'm like, well, I don't know, dude. That's kind of a whole different.
Is this where you threw up?
Oh yeah,
And
yeah. And I won't go into the whole thing, but I was definitely Antonio Banderas for a second. Anyway, so
I remember that story.
But the color had bled out from the TV across everything to where I had lost my sense of color, which was very disorienting and strange. And I mean, but it didn't freak me out too much. I was with someone else who was going through a rather manic manic phase, and she insisted that we leave the apartment. And I just kept repeating, I do not think that is a good idea. I feel so much safer in these four walls. But anyway, we don't need to recount that story. My point is like, even though that trip was pretty harrowing, and it got pretty scary as I ventured out into the real world, and for my first time, like not the safest setting. After that, like, I remember waking up the next day, and I had never seen the sky so blue in my life. The air had never been so crisp as I breathed it. Like, everything was so refreshing. I was so turned on to life again, because it felt like for 6 to 8 hours, whatever it was, I got to see all of the little things that make life possible in all of the things I never noticed life in before. And then all of a sudden, like, I woke up the next day and I'm like, whoa, holy shit, like the world is so vibrant. It was like going from 8-bit to 128-bit. You know what I mean? Like it was like going from fucking regular Nintendo to PlayStation 5. Like everything was just so much more intense and vibrant and just fucking real. Like it felt so good. So anyway, a sensation of well-being and renewed life flowed through him. Breakfast tasted delicious and gave me extraordinary pleasure. When I later walked out in the garden in which the sun shone now after a spring rain, everything glistened and sparkled in a fresh light. The world was as if newly created. All my senses vibrated in a condition of highest sensitivity, which persisted the entire day. I hadn't even read that yet, but kind of tells the exact same story. For me, I remember almost 10 years ago, I had a buddy of mine who I grew up with who was always very straight-laced, and just never got into smoking pot, never really did anything. And he reached out to me and he's like, dude, what do you know about magic mushrooms? And I was like, I know that everybody should do them at least once, which I then kind of changed to everybody should do them at least twice, or at least do them at least once in the right setting, because there were a lot of people who
do your homework first.
There were a lot of people who were eating mushrooms and drinking beer at frat parties and high school parties and like just missing the fucking point. Like having fun, and that's cool.
I've been there.
Totally. And also, I don't like to tell anybody what it is or what it should be. It's your thing. You do with it whatever it is that you want to do. But holy shit, give it the credit that it deserves. Give it a chance, just one time. If you decide you want to go back and just make it this fun thing with your friends, cool. I get that. I totally get it. But also, just give it a shot.
I think that's your right to do so.
100%.
I was just thinking back
right here, buddy.
When you were talking about Albert Hoffman, like when he finally got to sit down and enjoy his trip, I just thought it was so funny. I pictured because right now we'll throw on whatever music, me and you will listen to during a trip like that, and back then they didn't really have
it.
They didn't have a wide selection of music, so Albert Hoffman was probably like puts his record player out, an old gramophone or something. He's like like some old timey band shit, and he's just like snapping his fingers like.
He's like, damn, I've never heard this song like this before.
Sounds so much better. 1940s music. He's just fucking tripping balls and rocking.
He's like, all right.
This
is a little fox
He's got
trot.
suspenders on and shit. His bow ties all to the side. He's like, all right, motherfucking bicycle day, baby.
All right.
LSD.
We've got all kinds of comments. I'm going to go to the text line.
We got a lot of good ones.
I guess. I'm going to go to the text line
I can't read
for a second.
that too well.
I'm having a hard time reading them myself, so that's why I feel like I'm just getting a little carried away, Seth, and so we need to probably...
You haven't even ate anything yet?
No, I'm actually kind of glad that we didn't, by the way.
It's a good thing we forgot.
I don't even know if I forgot. I just, call a hot route. Let's see here. Video's frozen, but audio's perfect. All right, let's see. Maybe
that's an old one.
That's old.
That's
old. Let's go here.
I
I'll take one of the kaleidoscope doses, he says. That's what our boy Skittles says. Microdosing is amazing. I'm glad you brought it up. I'm not the biggest proponent of microdosing, personally. I'm not. It's not that I have a problem with it.
Get in where you fit in.
It's not that I necessarily have a problem with it. I just think it's kind of antithetical to the psychedelic experience is what I'm trying to say, Seth. And also, it's one of those things, like especially for like if you're going to use it like for treatment for addiction or things like that. Like the ultimate goal is to get it to where people don't have to consistently take medicine. Right? Like just being sober is their baseline. And that is not what microdosing is. Microdosing requires you to constantly be even micro under the influence. So to me, I feel like the unlocking shit, the life altering, life changing thing, I at least think that people's introduction, and I've said this on the show many times, I think people's introduction to psychedelics should be a powerful macrodose. That's
really?
me. Yeah, I do. I feel like
I think they're flirting with danger.
I feel like
they'll become a scare story, and that's going to put us back. That's going to.
This is under all of the get your set and setting under control.
Your homework.
Do your homework. Do it right. Find out which one kind of speaks to you. But at the end of the
Shop
day,
around. You want a good price.
yeah. At the end of the day, I want people. Yes, like and just coming from my own personal, like I'm not, again, I hate to put even my experience out there on what maybe it should be, because I believe that this is the most intimate truth that people can experience, and it might actually, you know, like really wake you up, but sometimes that's got to be earned. And the idea of like a bad trip, all I can say is like as I've done more, the bad trip doesn't come to me very often, if at all. And those are the ones that gave me the best morning after. Those are the ones that gave me a direction to take in my life, some changes to make about myself. Like the bad experiences are probably the best experiences. And there's no such thing as a bad experience, you know, unless you're being really fucking irresponsible and you're abusing psychedelics, in which case
mixing it with a lot of other drugs.
If you do that, then you're asking for trouble. But for the most part, you know, if you kind of follow this simple rule, if you treat this more like a, you know, people might be allergic to words like sacrament. It's my sacrament, but like, you know, but if you treat this with something that like could really unlock some doors for you that you didn't even know existed, you know. Don't be afraid of a harrowing experience, because typically the scariest experience, what you'll find is the easier or the quicker that you learn to surrender to that, the quicker that you're going to enjoy yourself. Like you just own it. Okay, the scary shit.
Some people,
you know,
went through these clinical trials with our buddy, friend of the show, Dr. Matthew Johnson, I mentioned earlier. He was on 60 Minutes 7 months after we had him on our show. Just, you know, got a 7-month jump on a 60-minute interview. No big deal. But anyway, when these people that go to these clinical trials and are trying like psilocybin, I believe is what they were experimenting with at Johns Hopkins. Mm-hmm. One guy on 60 Minutes was like, it was terrible. I cried the whole time. I was scared. It was very uncomfortable, but it was the best experience ever. He goes, I went in an alcoholic, and I haven't had a drink ever since.
That's the deal.
And he goes, whatever. And I get the microdose thing, because I guess you can still extract therapeutic benefits without having to go into some kind of weird trip that might freak you out. And if you don't want to do that, okay, I'll just take a nice moderate dose, allegedly.
Yeah. Listen,
I'm a 2 or 3.
Listen, that's my point is that well, first off, there's no wrong way. You know, if
there's a wrong way, Craig. I've heard some stories. I have a buddy that was arrested. They found him in his underwear, broken into a bakery at 3 a.m, and he was sitting there in his underwear, like eating pies, and had it all over him.
Is that person in the group? MB?
He might.
MB on the initials?
God damn. No. I'm trying to I don't have his permission. He said he was going to come on and tell the stories.
I've had that.
Did he tell you about that?
I've had that conversation with him. He should.
I didn't even know you guys have ever talked.
I missed this one. Let's see.
So probably that's a scare story for you.
Probably like my ketamine infusion. Felt like I was watching myself die, but took care of my headache. I'm gonna tell you this.
Took care of the headache, though.
I'm gonna tell you this. Like LSD, you know, it's first off, I've gotten to the point where I feel like all of these different chemical teachers, they're all essentially keys that open different doors for me. Like they open different doors to different places inside of my mind, my consciousness, inside of wherever we're going, and so you know.
Ketamine's just such a different experience.
I've
only experienced a couple times, but it takes you to a realm where it's like you're not really there, but you are. It's weird.
I've had 3 ketamine experiences. 4, but 2
total.
4,
Maybe
but 2
3,
of them were in the same
total.
night. And so LSD. I think my most powerful LSD experience.
I was gonna say
was
ketamine,
the one.
If you don't like it, or if you did like it and you want to go again, you can go right back.
You can go right the fuck back
You
in.
can go right back in.
You can go
acid,
right
you gotta
back in
wait
there.
Like 72 to about 4 days for your receptors to reset.
Yeah.
Shrooms the same
So
way.
I mean,
ketamine, you can go right back.
So you know, LSD. Probably my favorite experience was one watching, making a bunch of weird noises and watching Doctor Strange on it. And actually, believe it or not, of all the movies, Wedding Crashers. It was a true full on oil painting. It was so weird, dude. Like
I sat on a porch and watched people inside at a party like I was watching them on TV.
It's dude, that's wild.
I kind of forgot that we were in the same dimension.
I've had a couple of decently strong LSD experiences. I've had many, like psilocybin is my like most humbling teacher. And 6 to 10 grams of psilocybin will take you to it has taken
6 to goddamn 10.
That's a huge dose. Like for anybody listening at home, that's a big.
But psilocybin, how many different types or
there's
strands
a bunch
are there?
of different types. Yeah, I mean hundreds actually. Like there's a shitload,
and they all have ridiculous names.
Yeah. So I've had That's an insanely high dose, and like that's not something that people should start in at, I don't think. But my first ever dose with mushrooms was an eighth, like 3.5 grams, and which I think that is a sufficient first dose for just about anybody.
6?
3.5.
3.5.
Yeah,
okay.
an eighth.
Okay.
I think that's now whenever they're doing these studies at Johns Hopkins, what they consider a threshold dose is 250 milligrams. So that's 2.5 grams, I guess.
A little dime bag.
So
I don't think. I mean, depending on the strength of the strand, I mean, there's times where you can eat 2 grams and be like,
no doubt.
Just a couple of hours, be like, okay, that was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can eat 2 grams and it just hits you like
dude.
a
I've
truck.
had, and I travel often. I've had one mushroom light up the sky before. Like it's like it's weird. So also there's this thing where so once the veil drops on a psilocybin mushroom, that's as much psilocybin as will ever be. Or as much, psilocybin. It converts to psilocin after you take it, as will ever be in that mushroom. So it can be this big or it can be this big, and it's got the exact. So weight is not necessarily the best measurement of psilocybin unless you have pure psilocybin that you're dosing out. So if you're just weighing mushrooms, that's not necessary. And Terrence McKenna actually had a theory that fungal networks operate in a way that there's like they operate in pairs. So throughout the entire mycelium, there's a pair for every mushroom that grows, and that's how they communicate. So his theory is that you just eat them in even numbers, so that every one that you eat has a way of communicating. I'm here for it.
Pretty gnarly, man.
Well, you know what? You do it enough, like that kind of makes sense to me, because I've had aborts, like I've had tiny, the psilocybe mushrooms that were harvested after, when they were still small, but the veil had already dropped, and like eating 3.5 grams of those versus eating like a 2-gram mushroom and like a 1 gram and then another half, like, was significantly stronger. So it's all anecdotal. I'm not really sure how you would measure it without actually measuring the dose, like of it, without extracting whatever psilocybin you could out of it. But mushrooms are very sensitive. It's a kind of a difficult thing to do. So anyway,
and they age.
We kind of got off on a little bit of tangent there. So all of these different chemicals are, to me, they're keys to different doorways. And so,
is somebody running up and down the hallway?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe
I've never heard any
fucking
noise.
landlord.
Yeah, I'm gonna call him and tell him that there's.
Maybe I
some
should call a
noise.
landlord because people are walking. Fucking clown shoe. Anyway, so
not the landlord.
No, I love the landlord. He's fine.
He's a great guy. Friends with JC.
He is. Our buddy James Carlton, 314-961-4800. He's a State Farm agent, and you're crazy not to be insured by him. He saves me money every single month, and yet I still end up with like more coverage. I feel safer with him in my corner.
Great head of hair.
James Carlton, State's Farm. He's so handsome. He's a handsome lad. He sells a top-notch insurance experience, like a first-class insurance experience, you should check out carltoninsurance.net, 314-961-4800. Did you have something that
Listen,
like a
bro,
little
you talked
LSD?
about a bicycle day, but before the government shut this thing down, which would have been about the 60s during the hippie movement, the anti-war movement, that's when people started making LSD and other psychedelics synonymous with like the anti-war people and making them out to be criminals. And the rest is history. It's all, criminalized and whatnot. But they did a lot of, like we were talking about Johns Hopkins, what they're doing now. They were doing these kinds of things in like the 40s and 50s. Mm-hmm. And believe it or not, Craig, I got some archival footage.
Let's check it out, brother.
Of one of these experiments. So let's check this out. This is from, I don't even know the year. This is an artist that they, a doctor, psychologist, neuropharmacologist. I don't know what this man's credentials are, but he sits down with this artist, gives them I think 100 microgram dose, and studies them. So here's a little bit of some old archival footage I was able to dig up.
12 o'clock and we're ready to start this experiment. I'm going to give you this cup that contains lysergic acid 100 microgram. Will you drink it? How you feel?
Well, I feel very fine. This chair is not as solid as it seems to be. My hands are not resting against this chair. The rug seems to be billowing, seems to have an awful lot of the complements of violet and yellow. I have a sort of a wavering tendency to feel that I'm going to watch it. I think that I'd like to rescue myself from the idea that there's so many different realities here.
Some very rare footage there.
We're talking great footage. I loved it.
I got an inside guy. Yeah, I like how they really captured the mood. I don't know how the cameras could do that back then.
No doubt. Well, we were just seeing it through an LSD lens. So we got talking about different chemicals, and I do want to get back to Albert Hoffman's YouTube chat. Looks like a hot mess.
He's the reason for the season.
It does look like a hot mess. There's all kinds of people in the YouTube chat. So
it looks like a mess isn't lagging, or it looks like a mess.
There's just a bunch of shit because the Restream bot throws it all through there. So whatever they're coming through, it's getting them getting them all down in there. So people ask like, what's the most potent psych? Like, I don't think that there's one answer that applies to everyone, but I can tell you this, and this is just going back to that ketamine thing. Like, I didn't think that anything could get weirder than DMT, and I've heard a lot.
I have not blasted off or broken through.
And I have heard a lot of crazy, not crazy, but a lot of really out there experiences on the Salvia divinorum, which is like very weird. Like people turning into inanimate objects. Like somebody would turn into this fucking crystal bowl, candy bowl, and just be that, or a rock, for eternity. So that one's kind of weird. I didn't think that anything could really get stranger than DMT. DMT is the one. It's so fast acting, like it's instant.
Fast acting, tenactin.
Yeah, dude. Like it's one of those things that comes up immediately.
It immediately just fills all your receptors and just hammers them. Is how Matthew Johnson said it. That's the third one I mentioned of the night.
You come up immediately. And you're only in there for 6 to 20 minutes, right? But I've had it feel like 2 eternities, man. Like straight up 2 eternities. I've had a 6.5 minute trip. I swear to God, I was gone for the entirety of time as we know it, and then some. So.
That would freak me out coming back and being like, I don't know what year it is. Like,
it was harrowing.
Am I fired from my job? Have I not been to work in a year? Like
that one was insane. Caps versus stems. I don't think there's a huge difference there. I'm going to get back
caps,
to these.
I think from what I've heard,
no, you're not too late for stories. We're just getting started.
Caps are technically more potent with psilocybin, but the difference is pretty much negligible. It's very. That's what I've heard. So it's a very slight difference. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you can eat a handful of stems and have yourself a good time.
Sure,
you can talk to God on stems.
Yeah, like I said, like
people
it's
are like,
so hard.
I like a lot of caps, bro.
It's so hard to. There's people that swear. I personally think that's. I don't think there's a difference in myself. That's me. Again, that kind of goes down to, most people don't even realize that, once that veil drops, that entire mushroom has the most amount of psilocybin it will have the entire time. So anyway, so I didn't think anything could be weirder than DMT, and then I had a ketamine experience. Like, I had a K-hole ketamine experience, and it was. I'm not going to say it was the weirdest thing. I'm just going to say it was as weird as DMT in the most beautiful way. But ketamine is not a classic psychedelic. Ketamine is a dissociative. It's an anesthetic. It was actually developed and used in the field during wartime as an anesthetic, especially during the Vietnam War.
It makes everything look very fake.
It's weird because you can actually kind of be tripping and then also be watching yourself tripping, and I don't know a better.
It's got a dreamy effect.
I don't know another way to explain that other than imagine experiencing something and being able to watch yourself from like a third-person perspective experiencing that thing at the same time. I don't know a better way to explain that, but that dissociation is very cool. Like, it's pretty strange.
You expect the Twilight Zone guy to walk out and be like, imagine if you will.
Imagine if you will. Yeah.
A drug so gnarly that you can watch yourself do it.
That's kind of been my experience with that. Anywho, let's get back to.
I was going to say, Albert Hoffman, when we were talking about how scary that would be for somebody for the first time, imagine way back if what they're saying about the Salem witch trials is true. When you were mentioning ergot earlier, they believe that a lot of that's due to a late fog that settled on the wheat or whatever it was, and then the ergot grew on it, and people were eating bread made from that wheat and then inadvertently and unknowingly dosing up. Probably pretty high dosages.
I would think so.
And basically thought that they were under a curse and burned a bunch of witches alive, just accusing them of cursing them. Isn't that pretty much the story?
Yeah, I saw something.
That would be fucking scary. Way back in the time when, like, the idea of getting high, at least in this particular society, there's other parts of the world where China, they've been getting high off cannabis for 3,000 years.
Sure.
So.
Well, going back to, they talk about the
ayahuasca's probably been used for.
They say that, okay, so I actually read something the other day that they have a hard
right?
time tracing that back much more than several centuries.
Hamilton Morse has been trying to chase the fucking toad.
The
Bufo toad.
Yeah, so
Bufo, is it a frog or a toad?
It's a toad.
Bufo toad.
It's a Sonoran desert toad or the Colorado River toad. They're both considered the same thing.
The Dan Bufo toad.
So there are some Aztec, maybe Mayan ruins that show that they were using the Wachuma and different peyote and psychoactive cacti going back 1,500 years. And then of course there's also
to America.
Yes,
in the desert.
And there's also maybe
I want to trip like
maybe
that.
that's why I was always telling my dad that I wanted to do a walkabout. Dude, I was telling my dad I wanted to fucking eat cactus and go on a walkabout in the desert when I was 10. My dad's like, oh, sometimes you gotta go on a walkabout, That was just my dad. He wasn't gonna discourage it. He couldn't tell me, yeah, you should fucking go do that. These are the conversations I wish I could kind of have with my pop now, because I think it would be super fun to have. Anywho, so getting sidetracked a little bit. Ketamine was amazing. DMT also quite amazing. I love all of these different chemical keys to these otherworldly gateways. And I want to finish telling this story, since it's Bicycle Day, about Albert Hoffman. So the most surprising thing to Hoffman wasn't the afterglow of the trip, but the absence of a hangover. Another surprising aspect of LSD was its ability to produce such a far-reaching, powerful state of inebriation without leaving a hangover. Quite the contrary, on the day after, I felt myself to be in excellent physical and mental condition. Hoffman's initial experience convinced him that LSD would have great value for researchers in pharmacology, neurology, and psychiatry, but he didn't think that LSD would catch on as a recreational substance. After his nightmarish trip, he couldn't imagine anyone doing it for fun. I had no inkling that the new substance would also come to be used beyond medical science as an inebriant in the drug scene. Hoffman wrote in his memoir, "Since my self-experiment had revealed LSD and its terrifying demonic aspect, the last thing I could have expected was that this substance would ever find application as anything approaching a pleasure drug." In other words, he never would have suspected that Bicycle Day would become an annual holiday celebrated by psychonauts around the world. In 1985, Thomas B. Roberts, professor of educational psychology at Northern Illinois University, DeKalb. Oh, that's not even that far. That's cool. Specializing in coursework on consciousness, psychedelics, the transpersonal and mind-body relation, decided to commemorate the first LSD trip by hosting a special celebration at his home on April 19th. I originally wanted to celebrate the 16th, Roberts told Catalyst in 2013. But that year, the 16th was midweek and not a good day for a party, and the 19th was on a weekend, so I decided to celebrate the first intentional LSD exposure instead of the first exposure on the 16th. He later said he preferred celebrating the 19th instead of the 16th because Hoffman's famous bike ride evoked a monumental event in American history, the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. After Roberts told friends and students about the celebration years later, Bicycle Day festivities began to spread around the world. Some enthusiasts observe the day by dropping acid, while others may take another psychedelic or simply stay sober and honor the day by appreciating the work of psychedelic painters such as Alex Gray, Lee Conklin, Pablo Amaringo, and Lawrence Corona.
All the best.
Listening to psychedelic music, think tributes to acid like Jefferson Airplane's White Rabbit, or watching psychedelic movies, including 2001: A Space Odyssey and Easy Rider. Have you ever watched 2001: A Space Odyssey?
I have not.
Okay. I actually think it would kind of be right up your alley.
Okay. People understand, I don't like a lot of the newer movies.
It's a Kubrick film from way back in the day. It starts out, I'll tell you what, it's a movie to trip to for sure.
Okay.
It covers the time, basically from the time we were apes, hominids, to space.
Huh.
It's really weird how it's done. And if you're
definitely
flying,
watch that.
It's a different.
I've heard
deal.
the title uttered a few times. I've just never really looked into it. Just didn't sound.
I was kind of the same way. I didn't
capture
know
me.
much about it, and I decided to kind of. I was just going to watch it on a whim, and I wasn't tripping. But when I was watching it, I was like, Jesus, I think I got to be tripping to watch this. Kind of a big-ass deal.
I always thought to myself, Pink Floyd The Wall would be a cool movie on LSD, but I don't know. Because it just got so much darkness and so much... there's straight up Nazis in the movie.
Dude.
There's war, there's blood, there's some sex going on.
There's lots of
There's
sex.
some kick-fucking-ass
I am just
animation.
a newborn.
Here's a pop quiz for you.
Give it to me.
What song is on the album and not on the movie, Craig? It's probably my favorite song on the album.
On the album, but not in the movie?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say Comfortably Numb.
Comfortably Numb's definitely in the movie.
No, there's a different version of... It's not In the Flesh. There's a different version...
There's a song that's probably one of my favorite Pink Floyd songs. I don't like a ton of their stuff, but it's my favorite song on the wall, and it's not on the movie.
Is it?
It starts off disc 2.
Hey You?
Hey You is not in the movie.
Really?
You ever notice that?
Dude, I've watched that movie a million times.
No, Hey You. It's probably
interesting.
It's seriously one of my favorites. Goodbye Blue Sky. My favorite part of the movie, definitely, probably.
It's a cool
my second
part.
favorite song.
It's a really cool part of the movie.
I
love
that combination of sounds that they used to make that song is fucking cool. It's so uplifting, and it just goes in just like a pitfall into darkness, and it goes back to uplifting. And it goes with the animation, or the animation goes with it, I should say.
Sure.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
So just to kind of wrap up Hoffman here, while Hoffman didn't care for the effects of LSD at first, he gave it another shot later on and realized that his challenging trip wasn't necessarily the norm. Between his first dose in 1943 and his death in 2008 at the age of 102, Hoffman took dozens of trips on acid, which he came to regard it as medicine for the soul. In later years, he spoke out against the worldwide prohibition of LSD, which has thwarted attempts to study the medicinal and therapeutic potential of acid for decades. It was used very successfully for 10 years in psychoanalysis. He told the New York Times in 2006, it should be a controlled substance with the same status as morphine. That might happen someday thanks to renewed interest in clinical uses of LSD, which is once again being studied as a potential treatment for depression, PTSD, drug addiction, anxiety, and other conditions. Those treatments will not only help the human body and mind, but improve the overall state of human evolution, according to Hoffman. I think that in human evolution, it has never been as necessary to have this substance, LSD, he said during a 2006 symposium that was held in honor of his 100th birthday. It is just a tool to turn us into what we're supposed to be. That's pretty nice. We've asked people to send their favorite trip stories in. We're gonna get them. If anybody's got a cool trip story that you've still got a little bit of time to fire one in, we're gonna start reading some here in a second. I'm gonna comb all of these deals. Did you have another video that you wanted to share?
Actually, you want to go down the rabbit hole for a second?
Totally want to go down the rabbit hole.
This, if there's ever a day.
If there's a day to go down the rabbit hole, today would be the day. Let's do it.
All right, MK Ultra.
All right, so
now we're going to talk about some of the darker sides of LSD, and of course, it was our own government and governments throughout the world, actually.
So after Hoffman, finds this chemical, and it's kind of popular in in academia, people doing psychoanalysis, things like that. Sandoz Laboratories is like the pharmaceutical lab for the world. In Basel, they're synthesizing everything, and that's who Hoffman had worked for. The CIA were in the middle of the Cold War. And in the early 50s, I believe, the CIA decides they're going to go to Sandoz. They send 2 spies to Sandoz, and they buy every bit of lysergic acid diethylamide 25 that they have, which works out to be 10 kilograms of fucking of LSD. That is
how many hits is that, Craig?
Dude? I was just.
Can you even quantify it that?
Well, I can.
What they say that's enough to dose up over half the population of the United States.
So let's see here.
So we're looking at 170 million
How
people.
Many?
165 million, something like that.
They said it was enough to dose half of the country, and my thing is that
depends on how those people like to party, though.
No doubt.
Everybody in the country's different, bro. Some people like a big dose. Some people like to macro.
1, 2, 3.
Some people don't.
5,
Some people
6.
like to take them little halfers. Some people like tear me off a corner. That's their dose.
It's a billion micrograms. So
Billion.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Hey, bro, you got a billion micrograms I can get off you. And
it's 10 million.
so
hits.
they bought all of LSD in existence at that time, as far as they know, anyway.
Yeah.
Could've
As far as they know. And the reason they did it is because
somewhere.
they were convinced that the Soviets were going to get all of this and they were going to use it to, make our soldiers go crazy in the battlefield.
Who was in charge of this transaction? Who handed the money to who to get the acid? Like, did the government meet somebody in an alley in a van? It's like, hey, bro, you bring the stuff. Hold on, I gotta go meet the government, bro. They're buying all I got. We don't have to do this for anymore.
On April 10th, 1953, Alan Dulles...
April again.
I know. The newly appointed director of the CIA delivered a speech to a gathering of Princeton alumni. Though the event was mundane, global tensions were running high, Korean War was coming to an end, and earlier that week, the New York Times published a startling story asserting that American prisoners of war returning from the country may have been converted by communist brainwashers. Some GIs were confessing to war crimes like carrying out germ warfare against the communists, a charge the U.S. categorically denied. Others were reportedly so brainwashed that they had refused to return to the United States at all. As if that weren't enough, the U.S. was weeks away from secretly sponsoring the overthrow of a democratically elected leader in Iran. Dulles had just become the first civilian director of an agency growing more powerful by the day, and the speech provided an early glimpse into his priorities for the CIA. In the past few years, we've become accustomed to hearing much about the battle for men's minds, the war of ideologies, he told the attendees. I wonder, however, whether we clearly perceive the magnitude of the problem, whether we realize how sinister the battle for men's mind has become in Soviet hands, he continued. We might call it, in its new form, brain warfare. Dulles proceeded to describe the Soviet brain perversion techniques as effective but abhorrent and nefarious. He gestured to the American POWs returning from Korea, shells of the men they once were, parroting the communist propaganda they had heard cycled for weeks on end. He expressed fears and uncertainty. Were they using chemical agents, hypnosis, something else entirely? We in the West, the CIA director conceded, are somewhat handicapped in brain warfare. This sort of non-consensual experiment, even on one's enemies, was antithetical to American values, Dulles insisted, as well as antithetical to what should be human values. So they're afraid that the Soviets are using chemicals to brainwash American prisoners of war. And because we're Americans and we believe in liberty, by God, we're not going to do anything against Americans' will. 3 days after his speech decrying Soviet tactics, Dulles approved the beginning of MKUltra, a top-secret CIA program for covert use of biological and chemical materials. American values made for good rhetoric, but Dulles had far grander plans for the agency's Cold War agenda. MKUltra's mind control experiments generally centered around behavior modification via electroshock therapy, hypnosis, polygraphs, radiation, and a variety of drugs, toxins, and chemicals. These experiments relied on a range of test subjects, some who freely volunteered, some who volunteered under coercion, and some who had absolutely no idea they were involved in a sweeping defense
shows up.
research
I would like
program.
to volunteer, man.
From mentally impaired boys at a state school to American soldiers to sexual psychopaths at a state hospital, MKUltra's programs often preyed on the most vulnerable members of society. The CIA considered prisoners especially good subjects, as they were willing to give consent in exchange for extra recreation time or commuted sentences. Even Whitey Bulger, Black Mass, the big Boston mobster, Whitey Bulger wrote about his experience as an inmate. 8 convicts in a panic and paranoid state, he said, of a 1957 test at the Atlanta penitentiary. He was serving time. Total loss of appetite, hallucinating. The room changed shape, hours of paranoia, feeling violent. We experienced horrible periods of living nightmares and even blood coming out of the walls. Guys turning into skeletons in front of me. I saw a camera change into the head of the dog. I felt like I was going insane. He claimed to have been injected with LSD. And become one of the CIA's key interests for its brain warfare program. Holy shitballs. Okay, so the CIA remained keenly aware of how the public would react to any discovery of MKUltra. Even if they believed these programs to be essential to national security, they must remain a tightly guarded secret. How would the CIA possibly explain dosing unassuming Americans with LSD? Precautions must be taken not only to protect operations from exposure to enemy forces, but also to conceal these activities from the American public in general, said the Inspector General in 1957. The knowledge that the agency is engaging in unethical and illicit activities would have serious repercussions in political and diplomatic circles and would be detrimental to the accomplishment of its mission. It fucking drives me up a wall that this shit can come out a half a century later and people are like, well, yeah, man, it was really fucked up back then. Like, there's no way they could be doing that now. It's fucking crazy. So Operation Midnight Climax becomes a thing, right? So their first experiments with LSD were pretty simple. Really unethical, but simple. The agency generally dosed single targets, finding volunteers when they could, sometimes slipping the drugs into the drinks of fellow CIA employees. Over time, these LSD experiments grew increasingly elaborate. Perhaps the most notorious of these projects was Operation Midnight Climax. In 1955, 225 Chestnut Street in San Francisco, the CIA was devoting substantial attention to decorating a bedroom. George White, he oversaw the interior renovations, and he had a career with the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. So when the CIA moved into drug experiments, they brought him on board. Bringing him on board became their top priority. He hung up pictures of French can-can dancers and flowers. He draped lush red bedroom curtains over the windows. He framed a series of Toulouse-Lautrec posters with black silk mats for a middle-aged drug bureaucrat. For a middle-aged drug bureaucrat, each item evoked sex and glamour. George White wasn't building a normal bedroom. He was building a trap. So what they did was they would have these prostitutes lure back people of interest, and they would have a full bar there. He had a two-way mirror that he sat on the backside of. He would sit on a little portable toilet because he didn't want to have to get up and leave the room and potentially miss anything. So he sat on a toilet and would watch these people, and he would be recording these people of interest and essentially setting up different blackmail type thing. He was the original Epstein. I mean, not the original. I'm sure this goes back to Roman times. There's people always, trying to set up people of interest. But he was, they would get foreign dignitaries. They would get, powerful CEOs, people like that. They would bring them back to his room with these prostitutes. These prostitutes, they were in on it. And they would record these people, these guys being unfaithful. And in the 50s and 60s, that shit just didn't jive. You'd do anything just to keep that from coming to the surface, Though the CIA piloted these safe houses as a stage for testing the effects of LSD, White's interest shifted to another element of his observations: the sex. The San Francisco house became the center of what one writer called the CIA Carnal Operations Division, as officials began asking new questions about how to work with prostitutes, how they could be trained, and how they would handle state secrets. The agency also analyzed when in the course of a sexual encounter could best be extracted from a source, eventually concluding that it was immediately after sex. But perhaps unsurprisingly, much of White's actions were driven by pure voyeurism. I toiled wholeheartedly in the vineyards because it was fun, fun, fun. Where else could a red-blooded American boy lie, kill, cheat, steal, rape, and pillage with the sanction and blessing of the All-Highest? What a fucking scumbag. And the demise of MKUltra. The CIA's experiments with LSD persisted until 1963 before coming to a fairly anticlimactic end. In the spring of '63, John Vance, a member of the CIA Inspector General staff,
learned Vance Refrigeration.
Yes, that's exactly who it was. Learned about the project's surreptitious administration to unwitting, non-voluntary human subjects. Though the MKUltra directors tried to convince the CIA's independent audit board that the research should continue, the Inspector General insisted the agency follow new research ethics guidelines and bring all the programs on non-consenting volunteers to an end. In 1977, Senator Edward Kennedy, old Teddy Kennedy, oversaw congressional hearings investigating the effects of MKUltra. Congress brought in a roster of ex-CIA employees for questioning and interrogating them about who oversaw these programs, how participants were identified, and if any of these programs had been continued. The hearings turned over a number of disturbing details, particularly about the 1953 suicide of Dr. Frank Olson, an Army scientist who jumped out of a hotel window several days after unwittingly consuming a drink spiked with LSD. Amid growing criminalization of drug users, and just a few years after President Nixon declared drug abuse as public enemy number one, the ironies of the U.S.'s troubling experimentation with drugs appeared in sharp relief. But throughout the hearings, Congress kept hitting roadblocks. CIA staffers claimed they couldn't remember details about many of the human experimentation products or even the number of people involved. The obvious next step would be to consult the records, but that presented a small problem too. In 1973, amid mounting inquiries, the director of MKUltra told workers it would be a good idea if the files were destroyed. Citing vague concerns about the privacy and embarrassment of participants, the men who crafted MKUltra effectively eradicated the paper record for one of the United States' most obviously illegal undertakings. A program born in secrecy would hold on to many of its secrets forever.
They destroyed that paperwork for privacy of the.
Yeah, they didn't want to embarrass anybody.
On, man. That's why they did it. It's funny how they failed miserably to try to control people's
Thank you, Rob
minds.
Justice. 100 million doses.
They failed miserably to try to control people's minds using psychedelics or LSD, and Charles Manson was actually successful at it.
How to Get Ahead in Advertising is a crazy movie to trip to, and it has nothing to do with drugs. Check it out.
I was reading that. That's interesting.
2001: A Space Odyssey was supposed to have Pink Floyd Metal as the soundtrack. If you have never done Dark Side and Wizard of Oz, you're missing out. I've definitely done Dark Side and Wizard of Oz.
I've done that. I didn't see.
Did you see how you didn't see how it matched up? Did you do it right?
Third Roar of the Lion.
Mm-hmm.
It matched up to an extent, if you use your imagination. I don't think it was the craziest, thing in the world. I think you could play a lot of albums along with the movie, and it's probably syncs in some places.
What was the one that I heard?
I think it was the drummer of Pink Floyd said, that was never any kind of intent.
Well, they didn't do it intentionally. It just, they said
everything
just
is
kind
just purely coincidental.
Yeah, I saw Nick Mason a couple years ago. It was pretty cool. It was like early Pink Floyd. It was a Saucer Full of Secrets tour. It was pretty neat.
That's an old album.
Yeah,
right?
Nick Mason was touring, the original drummer, man. Well, it was.
And was Roger Waters the lead singer?
Nope, it was just Nick Mason and his band. I saw it at the Fox. It was really a pretty great show. Let's see. Rachel Crawford says, "Can you imagine tripping?"
I'm thinking of a different album. I thought you were talking about a really, really old album.
I was talking about a really old album.
Like Piper at the Gates of Dawn.
They played stuff off of Uma Guma, Piper at the Gates of Dawn, and Saucer Full of Secrets.
Huh.
It was all pre-metal. Basically, it was Adam Hart Mother, it was not Adam Hart Mother. Everything else besides metal, before metal, it was pretty good.
Like Outside of the Wall, I'm not exactly the biggest Pink Floyd fan.
Oh, dude, Animals is my favorite.
I can't really remember much. I've heard the song Sheep or whatever. I think
it's 5 songs.
Dark Side of the Moon is kind of a snooze fest. I'm not really
the
super
album.
into it. Yeah, Time is a really good song.
It's a great song.
Possibly my favorite Pink Floyd song. Outside of that, the rest of that album after Time, and I like how it goes back.
I actually love Any Color That You Like. It's
that's where'd this Kenny G song come from? It's like, what the fuck is
dude?
And
then when you go to see I
thought it was really
like
boring.
El Monstero or anything like that, their sax player, that guy gets all the pussy. That dude fucks so hard. He does, man. I cheer on the fucking sax guy fucking so hard. He's great.
Blowing sax.
They ask, can you imagine tripping in the extreme negative energy environment of prison? I actually can. We talked to Seth about that a little bit. Seth Ferrani, right?
He just released, or he didn't he just reposted an article he wrote a while back
about tripping in prison. We talked about it. Yeah.
And didn't they used to make, or possibly still do, some kind of psychedelic from the fungus on orange peels?
I'm not certain how
I've heard some shit like that before.
I actually don't think it would be awful.
I guess if you're used to it and that becomes your home after so long, and that's the environment you've kind of conditioned yourself to or been forced to be conditioned to, and you have experience using drugs and psychedelics, I can see how you can integrate that back into your life behind bars. I couldn't go into prison as a short timer. Like if you're there for a few years and you're at some maximum security joint and you get offered acid, probably not gonna take it. I might. I don't know. It just depends on how the first few days of prison go.
Look, straight up, if jail is my home, if I lived in one place for 20-something years, I would absolutely eat acid in jail. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Fuck yeah, I would.
If I'm anywhere for 20 years, even 10,
I'm home.
You know what
that
sucks
point.
about being us, especially like a little scrawny white guy like me? Like, it's always day one for me. 10 years into prison.
Not me.
This big, huge guy comes in and he's murdered somebody.
I'm walking in the first day and I'm fucking the biggest dude in the cafeteria. I'm fucking him right there.
I'm not gonna do that.
I'm gonna do it. I'm doing it right there in the fucking middle of it. I'm gonna really assert dominance here, Seth. I'm fucking this dude right in the middle. Anybody else?
Anybody else want to fucking
They're
shot
gonna be
time?
like that. You just marked yourself.
Yeah, probably. I think I would be fine.
It's funny. It's like I've been here for 10 years, but some huge guy walks in that just murdered a family or something.
Fuck
he
that guy.
comes in. He
gets
my fruit cup, and it's his first day. Because I'm just little Seth. No matter how long I've been in prison, the only thing is now I have a Jesus tattoo that's been scratched in.
Rob Justice says Nick Sand's rumored to have produced that amount over his entire clandestine career, only surpassed by Leonard Picard. William Leonard Picard. That's actually after. So once I get done with Pikal, I'm about halfway through Pikal, and then I'm going to read Tikal, and then I'm going to read The Rose of Paracelsus, which was written by William Leonard Picard. So also besides Nick's, Scully, I'm having a hard time. But Scully and Nick Sand worked together, and I remember, if you guys, that's going to be my streaming pick for the night. We'll get to it here in a second. So I think what we ought to do, Seth, is
We need to exit the rabbit
let's get out of the rabbit hole.
And Craig, earlier you were asking me, hate to cut you off, but
You're good.
I don't want to forget because I, being who I am and knowing who I know, I got some inside people. I got some more of that old archive footage of some LSD experiments from like the 40s and 50s.
Cool. Let's do it.
So yeah, let's check this out. This is some more footage from some early LSD experiments.
I think time for you to have your lysergic acid. Drink this down, and we'll be back after a while and see how you're doing.
This is a glass of water, colorless, tasteless. It contains 100 gamma of LSD-25, 1/10 of a milligram, the equivalent of 1/600th of a grain.
It's here. Can't you feel it? I can see it. I can see all the molecules. Oh, it's just like you're released or you're free or I am one with what I am. I can see everything in color. It's like a curtain or a spider web. Can you see it? It's right here in front of me, right now. Watch. No. Good heavens. It passed right through me.
I love those videos. The coolest part of it for me is when Dorothy's foot hits the ground in Technicolor. Money started playing. Right.
I say that part does almost look like it could be like a video for money.
Yeah.
I mean, it syncs up a little, but it's nothing mind-blowing, When I watched it for the first time, me and my brother did that. We synced it up. And does it matter what you're listening on? Because, and we did this a long time ago, a CD, cassette tape, vinyl, there's going to be a slight difference between the length between songs, right?
Mm.
Is there? Maybe a little.
I would think so.
There's no way it's exact.
The one time I did it, it all synced up pretty cool. It was like...
Would you listen on digital or vinyl or?
I feel like we started it on a CD, which is weird because remember, like the old CDs, like they would have like different booting. I haven't done this since 1999.
Yeah, I think that's probably when I did it.
97 maybe.
The people that discovered this thing did it on vinyl.
Right. So, and I mean, I would think that would be more instant than than a CD booting up or something like that. But anywho, so we asked people for their stories, and we told them we were going to give away. We're going to talk about. Speaking of which, how did Jack Nicholson end up in those old?
Was that Jack?
Looked like Jack Nicholson. Looked like he ended up in those old LSD videos.
I didn't notice.
Just a thought here. Anyway, so we asked some people to send in like kind of their best trip stories, their most profound trip stories. Our buddy James in the text line said, I took 3 grams of shrooms last weekend, had some beers with my wife around the fire, And she asked me when we were both inside for a moment, "What's up?" And I said, "The kitchen's moving." She then asked, "Am I moving?" And I replied, "No, you're the only one. You're the only stable thing in this room." No doubt. That's
See the
fun.
person that took that tripped. They mentioned the substance. They said they did it before school because they were on probation for weed.
I haven't seen it yet. Was it Coracetin or something, or Robo Tripping? Let's see here.
I don't know. But I always wanted to try. I always wanted to take a hit of acid in the morning before school. Always wanted to do that in high school.
I wasn't
Always
that
wanted
kid,
to,
man.
and
I was not.
I was
the person
totally
that
that kid.
The
I
person
was
I've
like, I
evolved
wanted to
into,
see-
dude. I didn't even want to go. I went to school high one time. It was the worst day
reefer?
of my reefer. Worst
You
day
didn't
of my life.
smoke every day before school?
Fuck no.
Wow.
I was an athlete, man. I
I played
an
football
athlete,
my
sir.
freshman year. I was a skater, bro. That's an athlete.
I did not fuck with that. Like I hung out with all the. I hung out
Smoked
with all
every
the
morning
smokers.
before school.
I just
Every
was
morning.
not trying to fucking go to school.
Snuck
Blaze,
off
dude.
during
That ain't me.
lunch.
I can't hide it. I
didn't even
wear
try.
that. I wear that shit, dude. Like my whole fucking face turns red. Dude, no, not with it. I just wasn't my jam, dude. As soon as like any of the seasons were over, or anything like that, like I was always down for the party. But as far as like trying to, that shit is miserable to me.
I had a math class.
I still don't love it.
I had a math class first hour one year when I was in high school, and he had one of those 3D art, like one of those 3D posters. It's all psychedelic looking. If you focus on it, it's like planets. You
Yeah.
know, one of those little 3D arts.
Sure. Yeah.
I would just sit across from that and just stare at it. That's what I'd do first thing in the morning.
I'm gonna go to the email for our first trip story.
Okay.
I'm not going to give
at it.
anybody's names just in case. I think I told people, message us or send us emails if you want to stay,
But seriously, I was gonna say, like,
Anonymous.
seeing what you could do and how much and what drugs you could do at school and survive the day was like a game.
See, dude,
It give you like great bragging rights.
wasn't my jam. I didn't.
Yeah, I had a buddy come outside. We had a smoker's corner where you're allowed to go on smoke. Did you guys have a place you could smoke?
We didn't. They had closed down like the smoking area at my school before
We had to go
before we got
right
there.
off campus.
St. Mary's had one like in the early '90s. I remember that, and the band teacher who was also like the disciplinarian for St. Mary's. His name was Mike McNiff, and he smoked Chesterfields, like fucking non-filtered cigarettes, always in the same spot, dude. And like everybody would go out there and fucking smoke with them. They weren't supposed to, but everybody would go
My
out there
buddy
and smoke
came
with them.
out there and he was just looking around and he lights up a smoke and he's like, I just did a pile of ketamine. He was at school.
At school?
At school.
Fuck no.
Walking through the hallways, just interdimensional, just everything's.
I couldn't do that, dude.
That's a trooper.
You ever had the
I
K
don't
legs,
know.
bud? I'm not trying to walk anywhere on fucking ketamine. Like I just wherever I'm at.
I don't know how fast to walk. I've never thought about it until you're on that and you take a step and you're like, all right.
Well, it's hard.
Time for another
It's hard to
step.
measure how fast you're walking when your legs are 42 feet long. That's
And they're
me
not
on
there. You
ketamine,
don't
like
really-
giant fucking K
oh
legs.
man. It's a doozy.
So we're gonna go to the. We're gonna start telling some people's stories here. There was a time I found a piece of a spacecraft. I was at a music festival in the Cali Desert back in 1994. Cubensis and Mr. Ectomy. I'm gonna say. Is that ecstasy? Oh, Mr. Ectomy's a band. Okay. Okay, cool. So I got a little bit of.
Sure, they're great.
I dropped 2 gel tabs and proceeded to go on a walkabout. Lying in the dirt, shimmering in the moonlight, I found a strange metallic panel, purplish in color and iridescent, about a square foot in size. You could crumple it like aluminum foil and it would return to its original form. It was as light as a feather and it wouldn't burn or melt. I took it home with me so I could examine it with a clearer head. About a week later, it went missing. True story. What do you think about that, bud?
So I had to go check out something on the window here.
Everything good?
Oh yeah, everything's fine.
So this person found a piece of a spacecraft. Okay.
All right.
2
2 gel tabs is the last thing I heard.
2 gel tabs. Okay. Well, we'll just go through it again. Shimmer in the moonlight. It was a metallic panel, purplish and iridescent. Purplish in color, iridescent, about a square foot. And you could crumple it up, and it would spring back to what it was. It wouldn't burn. It would just return to its original form. It was as light as a feather. He took it home with him, and I wanted to examine it with a clearer head, and about a week later, it was just missing. What do you think about that? It's pretty weird.
The aliens came and they got their thing.
It's probably like Thor's hammer, where it's just like it just like flew back to it and went back into its place. You know. All right, I'm gonna find the next one. So I've got another one here in the email. Let's go to this one. All right, trip report. I didn't start doing psychedelics until I was in my 30s. I took my time to decide if it were right for me. Turns out it was. Several years into my journey on the path, I decided I wanted to see just what I was actually made of. I do consider myself to be an adventurous person, but what follows has humbled even my most experienced friends. 14 hits, guys. 14. Turns out you can handle way more than you've been told. So several hours into what
when you
ended
have to. You have to. You have to.
Turns out, several hours into what ended up being a 70-hour trip, I was being taught earth, wind, fire, and air. Do you remember? I was being taught earth, wind, fire, and air by the multidimensional beings that live within all of us when I suddenly came to the realization that temples and churches must feel differently than regular buildings. And boom, I shape-shifted into a small temple, about the size of a regular house, but I was made of stone. The region was tropical, and if I had to compare it to a 3D location, I'd say Indonesia. So it being my first time in stone, I naturally had a few questions. Does the temple care about the religious practice? Nope. Does the temple like the smell of incense? Nope. The only thing that temple cared about at all was watching the sun and moon cycle. It cared about the wind and the rain. It showed me how to survive a flood. It was remarkable. I know that Native Americans claim that even the rocks are alive, and because of this experience, I believe them. Be the temple, be here right now. How about that?
That was deep.
That was a good one.
Deep.
That was a real good one. I love it. I absolutely love it. Let's see. We had a couple of other short ones that kind of came through. I'm going to find out here. Let's see. Here we go. Let's see what we got. One of my most memorable voyages was going to the IMAX theater at the KC Zoo to see Fantasia 2000 on a strip. It was pretty intense. It wasn't my first ego death, but it was certainly the one that I will remember the most. At that time in my life, I was having trouble, and a relationship was compounded by a pregnancy scare at the age of 18. The whale scene is when my heart shattered into a million pieces, and I knew from then on that being a father meant a lot more than I had ever considered. I left the theater in tears, and as we left the zoo, I remember all the animals knowing what I was feeling. They could see me, and I could see them, as if they
could speak to them,
as if they empathized with me in that moment.
A zoo.
That's pretty fun. I've never tripped in a zoo.
Never taken anything at the
Probably
zoo.
pretty fun.
I haven't either.
We've got a great zoo. What the fuck am I doing?
I don't know. It's just like so many families and so many kids.
A lot of stuff.
I gotta get lost. I gotta go to the reptile house. I'd just be in there the whole time talking.
The
to
herpetarium.
Snakes.
The herpetarium. Talk some puzzle tongue. This was bad. We were about 45 minutes in, and just finding something cool to watch. My buddy comes running into the room, and he has this crazed look in his eyes and says something like, "We're all going to hell," and takes off out the front door with the dog chasing him down the street. Now I'm pissed and freaked because we have an attic full of weed going, and he has just popped his lid and dead set on making it right with the Lord. Frying out of our minds, we managed to chase him down Walnut and get him into the car. This was iffy because we are also part of the evil. I had to use some sort of mind-controlled Jedi shit to bring him back enough to get him in the car. At this point, I'm not only fearing going to jail, but also being killed because he may think we're demons. Anyway, we managed to take him to church so he can pray. Then we go home and perform an overnight monumental cleaning exorcism just to appease his Lord-seeking ass. We haul all the plants, bongs, evil mags, and shit to church and dump it. You'll do whatever it takes to not go to jail, and be careful who you drop with. It was a total buzz fuck, and all I got was a shot at a hat. That's pretty good. That was pretty good.
Ever tell you about my first time taking acid? Ever tell you that story?
I wish you would.
Okay, so I'm 17 years old.
Okay.
This story scares the shit out of me. It doesn't scare me. It just scares me what teenagers are capable of. And back then I was full of piss and vinegar and thought I was invincible just like everybody else. And just so everybody knows, the story has a happy ending and we survive. But just, it's a scary thought. But it's also a funny story. So me and 3 of my friends, we load up the car. We load up my 91 Cavalier and come down to St. Louis for the night. A little over an hour drive from where I was living. So we're up Jacksonville, Springfield, Illinois area. So we come down and we meet up with some friends and we end up at a little rave in a loft downtown above what was then Gold's Gym.
Okay.
And, it's not there anymore, is it? It's been gone for a while, I believe.
I'm not sure.
But, a couple floors up, several floors up actually in this building, there's like this little, this loft. And we go in and it's kind of like an art party and artists have like their stuff displayed and they got the lights and they got the DJ and they got the rave music and people are popping and locking. They're just a popping and locking and enjoying themselves. And of course, there's a guy with a bag full of jelly beans, and these jelly beans contained LSD 25, Craig.
Nice.
I'm not sure how much, but I ate 3, not all at once, but I ended up eating 3 throughout like the entire night.
Mm-hmm.
So
they were dosed with liquid, I assume.
I think so.
Yeah.
And we, this is only my 3rd time tripping. I think I'd had psilocybin in the past, recently. This is my first time on LSD, like I'd said. So we decide it's time to go. So we go out, we're downtown, we go find my car. Wasn't super easy to find the car, but we found it. And we're driving, and my buddy who's DD, he's driving for me, and it's a manual, it's a stick shift. And I'm sitting there just fried out, like just sitting in my passenger seat. Like we have no clue how to get the hell back on the highway. We don't know where we're at. We're so lost. And normally, in my regular state of mind, I would probably be able to, navigate or just drive my damn self. Mm-hmm. But I was relying on my friend here. And I'm just staring at the signs trying to help him out. And the signs are just, there's no words on there. Those aren't words. It's just all kinds of shapes. The signs are literally like hanging and melting like Salvador Dali painted them on these poles. It is crazy looking. And I was like, this is not like mushrooms. This is very similar, but this is very intense. And my buddy, he's like kind of talking to himself, like mumbling. He's driving. He's like, and like kind of speaking in tongues. Meanwhile, the 2 dipshits in the back seat, they're just freaking gone. My buddy Weasel, that's what we called him back in the day. He's just sitting there staring at his own fucking hands.
Right.
And my other friend, he's kind of bummed because his stuff just won't work. So he's just kind of in the back. He's like the youngest out of us. And he's back there kind of pouty, kind of pouting. And I'm kind of, fried out up front. And my buddy is driving. He's a car guy. He knows a lot about cars. He's been a mechanic. He's like grinding gears trying to shift. I'm like, did you forget how to drive? And it kind of hits me. I go, I think he ate something. He's supposed to be the DD. And I'm like, bro, are you okay? And he's like, dude, I'm tripping balls. And I'm like, this is not good. We're fried out. And, the dude in the back, he's too young. He can't drive. So we're lost just driving around. Just completely just tripped out of our minds. So we pull him to this gas station, and you can't go inside. You have to go up to the glass. So my friend, he walks up there, and it's almost like he's waving the lady down, And she's just sitting there like, oh my God, I hate this job. It's like 3 in the fucking morning.
Don't even fucking do
Some
this.
guy on drugs is coming up to say God knows what. So he's standing like 10 feet away, and they have like a solid like 3-minute conversation. And he comes running to the car, jumps in, pulls out, and makes a right turn, starts going down the street with all the confidence in the world that we're going to be okay. And I'm like, what did she say? He goes like, I don't know. I don't remember. So we're just back at square one. Like, we had to go to another gas station. I was like, you're talking to him. I can't do this. And he's like, all right, I got this. I'm like, this time, remember what they say.
It's a fair request.
Finally got us on the highway. They're like, dude, it's like 2 blocks, make a left. You'll be back on the highway. We get across the bridge, and we make it home in one piece. And went to my friend's house and stared at his aquarium until the sun came up. And that was my first time, and we made it home, and it's...
You remember the next day?
Yeah, I remember thinking, there was no like messy come down or anything like that. I remember feeling relieved that we made it home.
I'd always heard there was always people talking about how acid hurt. Like the next day it made your joints hurt and things like that. And like it would say that it wasn't clean acid, and I've never really, I guess I've just always
clean. Everybody's like, is it clean? I'm like, yeah.
I mean, I get my experience with it is like it's always been pretty clean, I guess, because I don't have any of those achy,
dirty acid.
I don't have any of those achy like hurt pain the next day or anything like that, like your neck or anything. I always wonder what people would attribute that to, like were you fucking headbanging in a concert all night? Yeah, your fucking neck hurts, you knucklehead. It didn't have anything to do with the fucking acid.
I've never even heard anything about sore necks or anything.
Yeah. Anyway,
I've actually smiled and laughed so much that my facial muscles would be sore the next day. Have you ever had that?
Yes.
Like we literally would cheese and laugh all night, and it like got to the point where you'd feel stiff, like you'd been working out because you had, essentially.
It's the best. Let's see what else we got here. Anybody? Let's see if I've got any more stories in here. I've told my my acid stories are always like acid for me is not the craziest. Like I have pretty mellow fun times with LSD. It's certainly not. It is a long experience.
It's a commitment
of all the psychedelics. I mean, there's obviously longer things like Ibogaine lasts 24 hours. There's the Alephs and dude reading this Pakal book with which is all about Sasha Shulgin. It's like listening to how he did it, like it's just incredible. Like this guy, he would test it on himself, and then if he thought there was value there, he'd have his wife try it, and if she thought there was value there, then he had like this group of friends that would all kind of try and figure out if there was any therapeutic value to it. And so all of that is, it's been really interesting to see how this guy, like, dude, he did it for fucking just on a whim. Like he would try these different chemicals, not even knowing. Like you got something that is active at the microgram level, like LSD. Like you don't know. Now he had a pretty good idea with like the methylene derived, like the mescaline derived, chemicals that they weren't active up until like 2 milligrams or something like that, which is a whole fucking 0 to the right, but it's just fucking crazy, like what these visionaries, what these pioneers did, just for the sake of finding shit out. Really fucking interesting. So I'm seeing what else we got. Going to bed, y'all. We've got 4:30.
A lot of people going to bed.
Yep, no doubt. Triple CS Skittles, we called them. This is good already. That is awesome. I'd buy that book. My first time was at a water park at midnight with a few other lifeguards. We snuck. We had keys to all the slide. Long story short, I thought I was a fish. That sounds fucking awesome. Dude, after the end of two-a-days in high school, we would have at the end of like 2 days, we would have like a what we called a soda scrimmage, and It was like basically,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like
we did
running through your plays in a game time scenario and whatever. There'd be some fans in the stands, and then after that,
yeah, it's like a more. Was it open to everyone or?
Yeah, and then they also had one where it's like you would run like reps against like 3 other teams. It was like a round robin. We did.
I don't remember
like
doing
that was
that.
kind of fun. So we would do that, but then after this, we would go to Whitewater in Branson. And it was like this thing through like the Fellowship of Christian Athletes or something like that. And what it was an all-nighter at Whitewater at this water park in August. And dude, it was the coolest. Like there's never a wait for any of the fucking rides. And like now all I can think of is how fucking great that would be to just be on a fucking healthy dose at the fucking water park. How fucking fun that would be. It'd be a blast.
I wouldn't mind being in the water on a.
Oh, I'm all about the water, dude. Get me in the river. Get me, especially in some kind of natural body water, moving water.
I'm not
preferably.
huge on natural bodies waters. I like them aesthetically, but being in the middle of them, I just don't like the depth. It kind of freaks
That's fair.
me out.
That's fair.
I just picture crazy things like big mythical creatures like krakens coming up out of the water, like dead bodies.
No doubt.
Up.
I
Jason
like the
Voorhees coming out of the water.
I like the
Water's kind of freaky if you think about it.
I like the temple story. I like.
Oh, we got to pick a winner, don't we?
Yeah, I like the temple story. I like them all. I can appreciate all of them.
Who found a spacecraft?
So we got that one. That one was
tabs.
in the email. 2 gel tabs found a spacecraft, and a piece of the spaceship went missing.
I think that's.
It's
true,
pretty.
That's probably my favorite.
It's pretty fucking wild.
It's got the sci-fi aspect to it.
I've actually heard this person.
Skittles becoming a fish was kind of cool if you count that as.
I've actually heard that particular person recall that story before, and I've seen how fucking dead ass serious they are. They're like, dude, it was fucking real. Like that's the crazy. Have you ever had a UFO experience?
Have I had a UFO experience?
Like have you ever seen a fucking UFO?
I've seen some things in the sky that I thought were questionable. Okay. Sure. I mean, I've never seen anything for myself that was too crazy. I'm really into this.
I have.
But everything I've seen has been like video footage.
I have. So, okay. I'm going to tell an acid story I'd almost forgotten about. So, whenever I kind of first started coming back into psychedelics, I had this little group of friends, and we were doing work together. About once a quarter, we were eating mushrooms and howling at the moon, and really finding some tremendous benefits from it. And from there, we'd at different times, I went into ayahuasca ceremonies with a couple of these members, and it was just this really great little group of people that we were just trying to explore our minds a little bit, and so. But we didn't really have a lot of plugs. We didn't have psychedelics readily available. And so it was kind of one of those things where we knew we wanted to do it like once every 3-4 months, but it was also kind of contingent on being able to locate the fungus, And in this particular instance, ended up finding, I don't know, like a half ounce of mushrooms or something like that. So, and there were 5 of us. Okay. So, had pretty well decided that everybody was going to eat an 1/8, but there was kind of an odd man out. And I was happy to be the odd man out. And I ended up locating some LSD. And so I was like, tell you what, guys, they were still kind of riding that I'm only trying to fuck with natural stuff chain, And I totally understood that, and all of that was fine. And so I was like, I'll be the guy that takes the different chemical. I was like, just be aware that I'm on something a little bit different. I might not be on the same ride. And I was on. I had this sweet tart that I watched them drop 3 drops of liquid LSD on. And I ended up we all had a fucking tremendous experience. It was so fun, man. Like it was great. We laughed. We listened to fucking great music. We sang all night. We just professed love for one another. It was so great. And then I'm sitting down on this dock on this small little lake, and I am
sitting on the dock of the bay,
sitting in the morning sun. So I'm sitting down there, and I have a couple of insanely profound experiences that my wife would corroborate. And one of them was, I don't know what this is, dude. I don't know what this is, but again, people tell these stories in psychedelia, of things that have happened in this psychedelic state. And I have no option but to empathize with their truth, with their story, because I have had the weirdest fucking shit happen that I can't explain otherwise. And so I had this, so I had this experience where I was like, I'm sitting down there with my wife at the time. We're talking before she's my wife. We're talking, we're flirting, whatever. And I was like, hey, you want to see something? I was like, you want to see something pretty cool?
Getting your Mac on?
I'm getting my Mac. Dude, let me tell you something. This is the most Mac shit. This was the return of the Mac. This was Mac Morrison, baby. This is the coolest I'll ever be, Seth. So I'm sitting there, I'm chatting my wife up. We're having a good time. We're dangling our toes in the water. And I'm like, hey, check this out. And I was like, you want to see some magic? I don't know what compels me to do this. I just do it. Okay. And I'm convinced that I'm going to be like a water bender. You with me? So I'm going to move this water.
Like in a water what?
Like a water bender. I'm going to
like move. Part it.
I'm going to move this water with my fucking mind, dude.
You just decide you have telekinesis.
I just have this power right now. I don't know why. I don't know what compels me to do this. I just tell her, check this shit out. And I go like this, and I'm like, I'm concentrating, bud. I am concentrating, and I'm bubbling this 10 yards out, I'm bubbling this fucking water up, and it's getting progressively stronger.
So this water is physically bubbling up.
Bubbling.
To you or it's to both churning. Of you, to the whole world, it's...
To at least the two of us. I don't know. That's neither here nor there. That's just kind of part of the story. I don't know what's going on, but I know that I knew I could move the water, and I did. And not just like some coincidental little fucking ripple in the water. Like I was churning the fucking water. All right, let's put that aside. I don't know how that happened. I'm not sure. It's still so hard for me to believe. I'm still a skeptic. I can't make sense of it. Early in the night, we're all kind of sitting around this bonfire further up from the dock in the backyard. And off in the sky is the most peculiar looking star. It's just not a star. We can't figure it out. It doesn't look like a star. It's not a plane. It's not moving around. It's just frozen in space. And so we were all just kind of joking about it. And we called him Bob the alien. Okay. Bob's just checking out. Bob's just checking in on us. Okay. So, of the 5 people, one couple kind of peels off, and they decide it's whatever. It's 3 a.m.
Things are just too weird.
It's 3 a.m.
Craig just guessed that he had telekinesis. We got UFOs. I just knew I had telekinesis. We got aliens named Bob watching us. It's time to call it a night.
Time to call it a night.
You're still macking.
Exactly. So they're turning it in, Mac. But there's still 3 of us out there, and we're still joking about Bob, right? And we're sitting there. And then it was almost like in the middle of this conversation as we're talking about it, it's like this thing fucking knew we were talking about it. Okay. So it starts to move. This fucking thing's been frozen up there for 4 hours. If it's a drone, and it could very well be a drone, I don't know. If it's a drone, it's got eyes on us. And it's been sitting up there for 4 hours. And then it's getting a little bit late in the night, and it starts to slowly move towards us, right? This is in Jefferson County.
Okay.
It starts to slowly move towards us. And dude, if it had a razor blade that was attached to the ground, it would have cut me in half. It flew directly over my head. And if I'd have had a baseball, I could have hit it. It was so low.
Yeah, I was going to ask, where are we looking at elevation-wise here?
100 feet.
100 feet.
Dude, barely off. I mean,
because the arch is 630 feet.
Yep, way lower than that. So much so that I could see a craft that I've never seen.
A craft?
Dude, it was
lights?
I
is this
couldn't
particular shape? Or?
I couldn't make the sound without making it sound cliche, but it was more of like a it was a low whirring, like
something from like a 60s sci-fi.
But not like a propeller. Like this was something different than that. It was a resonance, and it flies right over my head, and like the three of us are like grabbing each other, like, what the fuck was that? It could have been a fucking surveillance drone. I don't know.
Did it like at any point? Did it just and then like kind of exceed into the night?
It just did the slow flyover, and then just fucking disappeared into nothing. Like just on the, maybe it could have been the horizon. Not even sure. Okay. But it was just over us, and then it was gone.
Because there's a lot of craft out there that
no doubt
somebody can't just identify. The average person can't just identify.
But the thing is that it was just a really odd shape for something that should be flying.
What kind of shape are we talking about here?
Huh?
What kind of shape are we talking about here?
Like a cross shape.
A cross.
Okay, but like,
all right.
But not. But like across, like it was like down, like it was flying like instead of flying like this.
Okay,
it was
so
flying
like
like
Boba
this.
Fett's ship on
Yes.
Empire Strikes Back. How
Similar.
his goes vertical.
Similar.
So you saw Slave One.
Maybe
because it's got the wings, it's got the crucifix.
Maybe
look.
I don't know.
And that's a big ship.
It's a weird one, man.
So I was just gonna say one thing that people, because like I said, there's so much craft out there that's unmanned craft and stuff like that you may not necessarily be able to identify, but a lot of times those are seen in particular places like major cities. I don't know what you'd see one out in where you Jeff.
We weren't that far. We weren't that far out of St. Louis.
So yeah, and one thing that if you notice when you talk about like the ancient astronaut theorist and the other scientists that get involved with these kinds of studies that look over this kind of surveillance footage of these different crafts where people are like, oh, what is that? And you can always just play it off like that's a drone, that's a Russian spy, that's something you just haven't heard of. Of course, it's a UFO because you can't identify the motherfucker. That's what a UFO is. But one thing that really trips up people, to include scientists and engineers and physicists, is movement. So these craft will be able to shift and go in different directions and do things that if there was somebody on board, they would die.
Yeah, they defy physics.
Yeah, they said there's nowhere in our technology, our aviation technology on Earth, where craft can move certain ways. That they have seen craft move on camera. So movement is a big thing that differentiates between, is that a Russian spy or is that from another planet?
Well,
because that was fucking weird.
I had another experience in St. Francis County, which I don't know why they call it St. Francis County and not St. Francois County, but whatever. Anyway, so I was sitting out there, and the amount of space that this star was covering was fucking immense, but it was going and it would go right back to where it was. Like they were dancing in the sky, like these three different fucking stars that
like
were
orbs.
They weren't stars, they were orbs, and they were moving so quick from fucking point A to point B.
That's what people are looking for.
Dude,
that's when the physicists and scientists and these
I couldn't fucking make any sense of it.
Everybody looks at it and they say, well, no matter what you try to play this off as, is just because you don't know what it is doesn't mean it's not from Earth. Well, what about the fucking physics behind the way it moves?
That's right. Well, even
and
like
there's no answer.
it's even what's crazy is it's not even necessarily the propulsion. It's not how fast it's moving across the sky. It's the way that it stops and then moves back in another direction immediately. We don't have fucking anything that can fucking do that. Not in the kind of space that this was covering. This was Mach fucking 15.
Yeah.
You know, like this is the speed of sound fucking times 50. Like it's so fucking fast.
They say like some of the craft that they've seen on surveillance or some like a lot of these Air Force and Navy pilots will get footage of like craft and they'll be like, what the hell is this? And the government always confiscates it and it's like, forget you saw anything. There's stories like that all the time. Like, oh, we're just going to play this off like it's nothing. It's always that weird movement where they're like, if there was a human on board that, they wouldn't have survived. That would be crazy. You cannot fly a vehicle
You couldn't
like
pull
that.
those kind of G's.
And an unmanned vehicle even. We don't have the technology to maneuver that in that manner.
It's pretty fucking crazy.
Pretty weird.
I believe, man. I believe.
Ready to wrap this thing up?
Yeah, real quick.
You want to talk about some things you're watching? Or?
Yeah, we can do that real quick. What I was thinking, I'm still watching, and I probably will be for at least the rest of this week. I'm still watching This Is a Robbery, and this shit is fucking fascinating.
Okay.
It's I've talked about it a little bit before. It's a robbery of some high-end fucking art that happened on St. Patrick's Day in 1990 in Boston, and they can't figure it's still unsolved. There was this dude who was like Massachusetts' greatest art thief, okay? Except he was locked up at the time of this thing being done. And what became, so this was around the time that like the FBI was cracking down on La Cosa Nostra, primarily the Italian mob. The Irish mob was still kind of running rampant, but what happened was this dude who was like, he was like a really adept art thief. He had been able to like what's the word I'm looking for? Negotiate a lesser sentence by returning some art. So once they saw that this happened, like,
I'll give it back.
Once they saw this start to happen, the mob would start to do this for like its capos and fucking and bigger bosses. They would basically hold these timeless pieces of art hostage as a way to as a bargaining chip to lesser sentences or to let them off. It's fucking crazy. Anyway, I don't know how this ends up yet. I'm only like 3 episodes in. They're like an hour a piece. But it's fucking fascinating, dude. Like the art that they stole is amazing. Like there's a bunch of different Rembrandt pieces, including Rembrandt's only seascape. It's called The Storm on the Sea of Galilee, and it's fucking, look that up. It's one of the
guy that invented the toothbrush.
Yes, that same dude.
It's a joke.
But just for the sake of the theme of the show, Amazon Prime has so many fucking awesome psychedelic documentaries. So I bought friend of the show Shane Moss's documentary, Psychonautics.
I still haven't watched that.
It's definitely worth a watch. You should totally check it out. But what you got is you've got The Art of Acid. There is let's see, Graham Hancock's Civilization's Love Affair with Psychedelia and Bizarre Origins of Our Psychedelic Civilization, which would probably be pretty cool to fucking check out. Let's see here. If you can find it, Orange Sunshine is my favorite fucking documentary of all time. It talks about the Brotherhood of Eternal Love and when they had created a ton of acid. Like 100 million. They made 100 million hits of acid, of Orange Sunshine acid. They were planning on making enough to give it away to turn the world on. Really fascinating story. It's also got like this really great love story that's tied up in it as well. Also on Prime Video, Terrence McKenna, Seeking the Stone, Mind and Time, Spirit and Matter. So there are, if you go to Amazon Prime, there are all kinds of great documentaries. Also, I'll just give a shout out since I'm reading Pikal and Tikal. Also a really cool documentary if you want to learn about Dr. Alexander Shulgin, Sasha Shulgin. It's called Dirty Pictures. If you search it on YouTube, it's available there. It's also available on some streaming services if you want to check it out. So, what are you watching?
Well, I haven't been watching much. Been very busy, but I do want to give some shout outs. If you, one thing I wanted to do is tell people about some things. If you're just now getting into the psychedelic research thing, you're like, oh, you mean psychedelics can be good? There's a science behind this. If you want to learn more, the documentary Psyched is a great way to get started. Very plain and to the point of what we talk about. It's got Michael Pollan's on it. Your dude, Rick Doblin, he's on it. Also, Joe Rogan's had a bunch of great guests. Hamilton Morris's interview on Joe Rogan is great. You got to watch it a few times because Hamilton is just so...
He's encyclopedic.
Fucking...
He's so smart.
Yeah. And you're going to have to go back and listen again because he just... maybe I'm just really
his newest
stupid.
season of Hamilton.
Maybe I'm speaking only for myself.
No, his newest season of Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia is really great too.
His LSD episode that's really good. It's the best one of the season.
Cool.
So that Hamilton Morris's interview, and then of course you mentioned Graham Hancock. He's been on Joe Rogan, I think, twice.
Some of the best podcasts you'll ever listen to.
So listen to Joe Rogan interview Graham Hancock if you want to learn about.
If you're looking,
some more
if you're looking for
psychedelics,
some psychedelic content, man, the Midnight Gospel is fucking great on Netflix. Duncan Trussell's podcast in general, the Duncan Trussell Family Hour. I've got a score of psychedelic documentaries. Aubrey Marcus talks a lot
Tales
about
from the Trip. If you want,
Tales from the Trip's pretty cool.
6-7 minutes and you just want to watch a quick video, go to YouTube and look at
a
Tales
dude
from
I
the
went
Trip.
to high school with has a Tales from the Trip.
What the fuck? Really?
Yeah. Comedian Kenny DeForest. He graduated a year behind me he graduated a year behind me at Kickapoo. He's a hilarious comedian, but he's got a great DMT Tales from the Trip. yeah, it's
Right
after
now,
you kick it.
Kickapoo.
A long ass fucking time ago in a town called Kickapoo. And then there's a couple of really great psychedelic podcasts. Shane Moss has a new podcast with Ramin Nazer called the Mind Under Matter podcast that I love. The Astral Hustle with Corey Allen is really good.
Actually, are the interviews we did with Shane and
they are still on HoosierSophisticate.com.
We got some great interviews. We got Dr.
Matthew Johnson.
Matthew Johnson. You know, I'm gonna put the Danny Nemu interview on the page sometime so people.
It's one of my faves.
It's probably one of the best shows that we did.
It's actually the last one. That's the last audio that we put on there. So you got on the audio page in the interview section, you got Reverend Danny Nemu, you've got Shane Moss, Dr. Matthew Johnson, our buddy Andrew Wiscombe, Kelly Kennedy, and Adolphus Bush V, Todd Siegel, the psychic, and George Christie.
Our psychic detective, Todd Segal.
And our first interview with Shane. So both of those are on there. Our interview with Seth Ferrani's on there, and then our talk with Austin Peterson and Gary Nesner, and then old Hoxie, Benjamin Hockman, and one of the early talks we had with John Payne.
John Payne.
So
some good hot seats.
Those were great hot seats. That was all when we were still on 920. We should probably update that. We need to get back to getting some badass interviews on here.
Dude, I would like to go through now that we know like we're better at interviewing. I'd like to go because the people that were willing to talk to us right out of the gate, that was pretty fucking cool. The fact that Gary Nesner had been on this crazy media tour because of the 25th anniversary of Waco, and the Paramount Network had released the 6-part series. There's all these documentaries out, and he's like being interviewed left and right. And here we are, Hoosier Sophisticate, brand new show on WGNU St. Louis. And I email him from my Gmail account, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll do your show." He emailed me back like an hour later. He's like, "Sure, just let me know."
He was awesome, dude.
He was great. And
he was awesome.
Dude, you got to read his book. His book, Stalling for Time, My Life as an FBI Negotiator. Great book. I want you to read it. We got to get him back on.
Yeah, we ought to.
We talked about Waco with him, and then I read his book, and I'm like, dude.
That's what's
I have
wild.
A million more questions.
That's
Ruby
really what's
Ridge,
wild to me, man.
DC Sniper, that prison riot that he was a part of.
It's unfortunate to see because the dude was he was very talented, and he was their lead negotiator, and they started getting big budgets for weapons, and the ATF started getting big budgets for weapons, and it's this big fucking dick measuring contest between all the 3-letter agencies about who could bring in the bad guys, and they started getting away from the skill sets of a guy like Gary Nesner who can actually talk people out of and opted for militarization and outright attacking American citizens without due process. It's really fucked up, man.
Their theory was there's all these cameras on us. The media, the whole country's watching, and here we are acting like a bunch of pushovers, and every crazy person out there building a bomb in his basement is watching this. So we have to apply pressure. We have to show that we're still, even though we're negotiating in the negotiations, the negotiators, they're working with these people, and they have seen at least some success relative to what they were up against. I thought they did pretty fucking well.
Fuck yeah.
But they're like, we got to apply some pressure, and plus, is a way to take some anger out because they've been staged up there week after week, and then next thing you know, they've been there. How many days? 53 or something?
It was a bunch. It's fucked up, dude.
50.
It's a fucked up deal.
If you haven't,
there was a lot of kids killed in fucking Waco.
Have you seen the 6-part? Series, the Waco
I
one?
am
on
like
Netflix.
on. I think I'm on. I got to like episode 3.
You haven't seen the last episode? It's a tough watch. It's a tough watch.
I need to
very
finish
much. It looks just like the goddamn news footage and everything.
I need to finish it.
And then the way it ends, like, the real Gary Nesner is in it at the end. He has a small part at the courthouse. when they're getting ready to testify, and
he's played by.
It just fades. Like they all die, and then like there's some sad scenes.
Dude,
and
a dude that I follow
out.
online. He went down to Waco to fucking. He said it's a harrowing, it's a heartbreaking, like memorial and everything down there. Like
they go like the.
I mean,
the
they
British
tell us a
Davidians
story,
still get
man.
Together there.
Yeah, like they tell us a story about abuse and things like that was going on. But wouldn't you tell people that story if you fucking if you killed a bunch of children? Wouldn't you fucking make it sound like that was the worst fucking?
Using gas
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If you were gonna fucking use weapons against American civilians, you'd almost have to fucking tell a story of abuse and of atrocities happening there. That took a weird turn, but Gary Nesner was great. So also, I've talked about a few different podcasts. I haven't uploaded anything in a long, long time, but we did start the Missouri Psychedelic Podcast last year, and I recorded 3 podcasts on there that I really quite enjoyed. One we called The Gospel of Luke, which was with a friend of mine in Kansas City, who I've been in some amazing spaces with. He's one of the most. It's a great 3-hour podcast. I like, not to toot our own horn, but like it's just a really good conversation. And then we had Rick Doblin from Maps, which is as big as it gets as far as psychedelic guests goes. And then also Max Montrose, the founder of the Trichome Institute. The guy knows more about weed than anybody. We were at the weed conference last year, and he was like, he goes, I would love to do your podcast as long as we don't have to talk about weed. And I'm like, buddy, my podcast is about psychedelics. So he and I got in the weeds about psychedelics, and it was a fucking really fun conversation. So if you guys want to listen to a few awesome conversations, check out the Missouri Psychedelic Podcast. Going to be going through some rebranding and going through it. I've got a bunch of people lined up in Missouri as we move towards getting kind of a right to try and some psychedelic legislation being filed. I want to give a shout out. We talked about James Carlton earlier and him being the best insurance agent in the goddamn world. But also, today is your last day if you want to jump on nativehempextract.com and use the code HOSOLOW. It is the most. It's like a 45% discount right now. You can get Delta 8 edibles sent to your door. Anything on the website, 45% off. That is an incredible coupon code. HOSOLOW, HOSOLOW at nativehempextract.com. I fucking love Native Hemp Extract. I love Dennison Collard. I love the amount of effort that he puts in putting the most quality product out. And he's got his 1,800 milligram full spectrum hemp oil available again on the website. It's the best CBD product I've ever used. So you should check that out for sure. And here's the deal. Sweet Leaf Emporium has been a place for the counterculture to gather for the last 20 years. And they're located in Farmington. They're going to be reopening up in Festus here pretty soon. They make custom glass. They do it right there in the store. If you play an instrument, they want you to come in. They want you to play some music. They want you to hang out and jam for a while. Buy yourself a piece. And they're not going to let you fucking ask for water pipes, Seth. You're not going to use any code language. They're going to tell you these are cannabis accessories. This is a state where cannabis is legal for medical patients, and you are buying a bong, sir. They will take offense to you calling it a water pipe. You need to go down to Sweet Leaf Emporium in Festus. I've got a video I'm going to make up. I went down. Jason was jamming out the other day, and I said, Jason, what is it that you want people to know? And he says, I just want people to know that cannabis saves lives. And I said, okay. All right, I see you, Jason. You want to get medicine in the hands of people. Right on. Thank you for that, sir. So check out Sweet Leaf Emporium. We are above Cafe Piazza, and they're arguably my favorite pizza in all of St. Louis. I love Cafe Piazza pizza. We had my son's birthday here a couple weeks ago in the Benton Parkade. It's a new cool little spot. They just got the windows painted up, I noticed. Great food down there. Reasonable drink prices. Like, it's a cool little spot to hang out. Come check out Cafe Piazza at the corner of Lemp and Arsenal. Who am I missing? Am I missing anybody, bud? I think I got it.
Sounds to me like you nailed everybody.
I think I nailed it, man. Thank you guys so much. We apologize for the video once again kind of being lagging behind a little bit. We will have a solution for that next week. I hope. We're doing everything that we can.
I think
but
we've been okay so
I've
far.
got I've got a pretty good idea The Streamlabs could have been part of it, but I've got an idea. It should be using less of the PC, so that's what doesn't really make sense. But I've got an idea for how to fix it. It's still pretty choppy, and it's certainly not because of our internet connection. So I appreciate your guys' patience. It sounds like the audio was good at home. Happy Bicycle Day. Have a wonderful 420 tomorrow if that's your thing. Try and go and educate some people. Come out of the psychedelic closet, if you will. The way that we destigmatize these things is for people to